Hi. Today, we're going to, me and Dylan are going to address something that probably more famous in the atheist movement than like the mythology movement per se, is rising and dying gods, or dying and rising gods. Depends on how you see it, because they do both in a sense. It's a cyclical thing for some of them. And before we get into that, we're going to watch a real quick video.
I was responding to Frank Turek.
Right.
And Frank Turek made the statement, I can't remember exactly, but they're like, there are no examples of dying and rising gods in ancient world or whatever. I don't remember exactly.
Right.
And I just said, how do you account for Inanna's descent? And I quoted the lines. It's like lines 170 to 173. I think I did in the tweet, probably not in the tweet, or I said the lines in the tweet. There you go. And so Michael.
All right, that's good enough for that, because the whole point was he's justifying what I was saying anyways. And then the next one.
We're going to make Jesus number one, because my whole purpose in this video is to show you Jesus' death, burial, resurrection, ascension is not an uncommon thing in the ancient world when gods or divine figures who are being worshipped are in the scene. The zeitgeist of the era was full of superstitions and mythologies that were developing. People believed in these things all the time. I'm going to be reading from Dr. Richard Carrier's article, and I hope you will go and read it yourself and follow up with his hyperlinks to see the source material for yourself. The name of his article is Dying and Rising Gods. It's pagan, guys. Get over it. Number one is Jesus. Born of a virgin, does miracles, lives his life, dies, crucified, buried in a tomb after 3 days and 3 nights, just as Jonah, and he's spit up. And of course, in this particular one, he resurrects and ascends on high. Number two, Osiris. A lot can be said about Osiris, so let me read some and then leave the rest for you to read yourself. Not only does Plutarch say Osiris returned to life and was resurrected, exact terms for resurrection on Isis and Osiris 35, see his discussion on the empty tomb, and also describe as physically returning to earth after his death. But the physical resurrection of Osiris's corpse is explicitly described in pre-Christian pyramid inscriptions. Osiris was also resurrected according to Plutarch on the 3rd day and died during a full moon, just like Christ. Passover occurs during the full moon. And in Plutarch, on Isis and Osiris, 39 and 42, Osiris dies on the 17th of Athar, the concluding day of the full moon, and is raised on the 19th, 2 days later. Thus, 3 days inclusively, just like Jesus. Jesus dies on a full moon. Osiris dies on a full moon.
Okay, we're done with that. So, because my point is not to go on with about the topic. I just wanted to show that guy has hundreds, thousands, or whatever of followers, and the other atheist blog that he was referencing and using, for his ideas, was also a famous atheist, Richard Carrier. So my position is that my goal, I'm not on a side, first off, to understand, although I do believe that there's no miracles ever. So any miracles claimed in the story of Jesus, I feel is nonsense. and I'm an atheist. I don't believe in gods and supernatural. I'm anti-theist, and I'm also an anti-religionist. That I believe in truth. And I believe that religion promotes 3 forms of non-truth often. They do pseudoscience, pseudo-history, and pseudo-morality. So those things are detrimental to humanity, I feel, and thus have to be addressed.
Yeah.
So I think that most of the Christians' arguments, or even some people that say that there's no such thing as a rising, dying God, I find that to be false. And on the atheist side, they try to say that because there's rising and dying gods, Jesus obviously is a myth and false. And I don't think it actually means that. And there's some atheists that seem to push the fact that Jesus, they know, is a myth. I also don't know that. I assume that certainly most of the story written about Jesus is myths. Also, there's an issue that people, I think, sometimes the atheists are overstating the thing, because a lot of the rising and dying gods to me could relate to agriculture, times or seasons of the year, and then also relate to, like he was talking about the moon, relate to the sun or the moon in its different phases. And inherently, although he says that, Jesus rose on the moon or whatever, there's not a huge connection to the sun and the moon phases per se in the Bible to why Jesus is doing things. Although it is interesting that they're, in a sense, both the moon, because I do think that moon and sun deities and star deities or whatever are related to, this concept. I don't think it's a big concept. Some of the people feel that it isn't a category at all. I agree it's not a large category that major mythology, investigators are investigating, because it's not like it's all over the world. If there's a small portion of deities that seem to be doing something like this. And so in that sense, it's also wrong for the theists to say, or Christians to say, that there isn't any. That's just blatantly false.
Yeah, and it's a topic I'm unfamiliar with, but those two cases that we just watched, Jesus and Osiris, those are the two I'm the most familiar with. I remember watching some videos, this was a while ago, I think I was still a teenager, of like different like philosophers and even some historians trying to connect those two traditions because of the apparent similarities that they share.
Right. I think it's more justified. And see, some people feel like the ancient, Israelite religion was mainly Sumerian. I think that it's actually at least four things.
Okay.
I think it starts in probably sort of the Babylonian or Sumerian, Mesopotamian, Assyrian, whatever kind of stuff. It also has Canaanite stuff, which is where they come from, and the ancient Israelis were a version of the northern Canaanites. And that, of course, Canaanites come from the Kurgal-Axis culture, which is the South Cossack Mountains.
Yep.
And so genetically, 4,000 years ago, they relate in a sense to that. But so they probably have some inherent myths came down, But also, it is true that area was run by Egypt for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Centuries.
So, and there was a lot of trade even after that fact. So the fact that in DNA, E goes straight up through there 5,000 years ago and keeps, in a sense, interacting back and forth. So for sure, if they had Egyptian influence, that's not actually ridiculous. And if they have Canaanite influence, it's extremely, relevant. And then if it has some relevant to the Cossack Mountains, that would also be relevant because genetically there is a connection. And then Mesopotamia takes over that area also. So there's going to be influence from that. And it's also true that some parts of the Bible sound like stuff from in a sense, the Hatties or the people from Turkey, the Hittites. Yeah. Well, it's also the Hatti first, and then it's the Hittites. Hittites is a version of them in a sense. They take over sort of the area. Anyways, but there's stuff that relates probably to them. And even the Ten Commandments sound like a treaty from the Hittites. And the Hittites who sold Abraham supposedly for his wife's grave, I believe. So they are interacting. And also it says that Abraham went back to the place of his father, which was literally in southern Turkey, southeast Turkey, the city that he went to, or was near it, or whatever. And so there's definitely, to me, a connection up there. But also the Persians take over. Zoroastrianism definitely is involved. More Christianity, but still a little bit of the late Israeli or Jewish, thinking. And then certainly Christians also have Greek in there. So
I definitely.
So it's not like so the reason I bring this up is because some people act like religions are pure, and whenever you try to say something is similar or could be related, people think of these places now as like these people didn't interact. That's completely false.
Yeah.
I don't want people to get that wrong impression either. I don't think that as well. And so go ahead and
Life-Death-Rebirth Deities. Examples of deities who die and later return to life are most often cited from the religions of the ancient Near East. The traditions influenced by them include the Greco-Roman mythology, and cited the examples of Osiris, Tammuz, Adonis, Attis, Zagreus, Dionysus, and Jesus. In addressing whether there could be a category or mythology link in dying and rising god, life-death-rebirth deities, I would like to highlight that both the sun and moon in a mythology context are often portrayed as rising and dying and rising again and again. Thus, this could be expressed in relation to a category with the idea of dying and rising gods. AI overview. The sun and moon deities are frequently depicted as rising, setting, dying, and being reborn in a continuous cycle, reflecting the ancient understanding of daily and monthly rhythms as metaphors for life, death, and resurrection. The concept of dying and rising gods refers to a category of deities in ancient Near Eastern and Mediterranean mythology, popularized by Sir James Frazer in The Golden Bough. Frazer professed that dying and rising gods were ones who could undergo a cycle of death and resurrection, often tied to agricultural seasons. Utu, a Sumerian. Every morning, Utu, known as Shamash in Akkadian, is described as cutting his way through the mountains of the sunrise to bring light, often depicted as a radiant god. After setting in the west, he enters the underworld or netherworld to spend the night, passing through the mountain of the horizon. Ra, Egypt. The sun god Ra was believed to travel across the sky by day and die or descend into the underworld at night to battle the serpent Apophis. Each sunrise marked a triumphant renewal and rebirth. Inanna, Sumerian. Inanna, known by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians as Ishtar, traveled to the underworld and hung as a lifeless corpse for 3 days before being revived, mirroring the 3 days of the dark moon, a myth often associated with resurrection. Osiris, Egypt. Osiris also represents the light in the moon, with the moon dying and being reassembled by Thoth over a 3-day period. And so that's interesting. Even like way before Jesus, you have these myths about the gods being dead, and you have this number 3 that keeps popping up again and again.
Yeah, I really feel the 3 thing actually is very old. It's way older than, and I'll show you a picture. It's way older than even that. It goes back to the Paleolithic era because, to me, they're relating it to the sun and the moon, which they saw as different stages. In fact, sun deities are often a morning deity is separate, or could be female, and then the noon deity is a male, and then the night deity can either be a female or a male, and sometimes not even the same as the other ones. So we think of this stuff as one deity, but that's a wrong way in a mythological sense to understand what's going on. So to me, yes, it's way beyond Jesus. It's also way beyond the rising and dying gods. And it also, the Holy Trinity has nothing to do with just Jesus either. There's already multiple examples at different ages of the 3, probably the sun, the moon, and the star. And there's different ones I show from Göbekli Tepe, and the culture in Israel that's like 23,000 years old is doing it. It's a bird biting a moon with like a snake or something going over its head. And then there's Babylonian and things, and there's stuff from India and stuff from Greek and stuff, from Scandinavia and Egypt. It's really a wide category of the Trinity sort of thing. But anyways, same page is what I'm trying to say, that yes, you're correct, but yes, it's not limited to this rising or dying. That the Trinity idea is extremely old. The idea of the sun and moon is extremely old. It did not start even with agriculture. It way pre-occurs or whatever, way before that. And even like the Jewish calendar is for the moon, and the Islamic is for the moon calendar. So they're not even for the sun, just so you know.
Okay.
and which there are moon and sun calendars. Generally, in a sense, anthropological sense, the moon calendar is more associated with hunter-gatherers or pastoralists on the move that move there, in a sense, move to follow herds in a hunting sense and move herds to eat different grazing lands in a pastoralist or whatever type of sense. So that's generally when you have that association, it kind of tells you who it is. And that's also so that could be for cattle, could be for sheep or goats or whatever, for as far as pastoralism. And then the sun, of course, is generally related to ones that care a lot about agriculture.
The lunar calendar, I'm familiar with that because the Anishinaabe around the Great Lakes, they have a lunar calendar.
Right, exactly. A lot of Native Americans actually do, because they're more hunter-gatherer related and less agriculture related. So anyways, I'm just trying to say those so you understand the context. Because to me, a lot of times these people are addressing mythology outside of, say, Jesus, Christianity, the Bible, but they're not really like interacting with it, I feel, the way I would, which is talk about more, larger concepts that are not limited to, just trying to address the Bible.
Okay, I have another question.
Yeah.
This Trinity concept, like besides the rising and dying gods, do you think it connects with like the concept of an upper, middle, and lower world?
I'm sure it does. Just like the duality concept of the male and
that
female, the yin and the yang, the day and the night, the two first twins, the twins that aren't twins, like the pseudo twins. There's a mythologies on that. There's one also, the dual being, where the original being in some mythology is a primordial being that's neither male or female, neither straight or gay, sort of bisexual and androgynous, and so So it is correct that a lot of mythology, in a general sense, mirrors older mythology or has all kinds of this stuff like impregnated inside of it. Or like I try to explain, to me, it's like Legos. Everything has animism, and then they stack, totemism and shamanism and paganism, and then they're just stacking these different concepts all on top of every religion. Is not like this exclusive thing all by itself that doesn't have any relation to anything else. It's just that's fantasy.
Yeah, it's always evolving, sometimes pretty slowly over thousands of years. It's
Absolutely.
getting influence from trade, different people moving in, people moving out. It's
Oh
change
yeah.
over
Well,
time.
and people think too that somehow Jesus has always had long hair. No, he did not.
Oh no, you can go back to the earliest known renderings, the earliest known paintings of him, and he has short hair.
Exactly.
Like he looks like a typical Greek almost.
Oh, and also young looking.
Yeah, that too.
But also there's stuff with Jesus that, where Jesus has wands and stuff like that. Like where there's magical Jesus. So not only and that's older, right? It's a certain time. I'll go ahead and show.
Yeah, you got me curious now about the wand Jesus.
Well, yeah.
Well, because I'm trying to picture Jesus as a wizard with like a hat and everything.
You see that right there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, wand wielding Jesus. And so you see what it says? It says early Christian art, 3rd and 5th century. So a long time ago, certainly more traditional than now, right? Sometimes depicting Jesus holding a small rod or wand while performing miracles. Oh, so he's like a magician.
Such as raising Lazarus or multiplying loaves. Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
But they had him doing it with a wand.
Right. So Jesus, it says right here, like representing the rod as divine power, spiritually mimicking the Old Testament figures like Moses. Remember, he used the rod or whatever to get water, rather than portraying Jesus as a contemporary sorcerer. Yeah, but it also could be Jesus almost like a contemporary sorcerer. And there's definitely all kinds of things. And in the pictures, Jesus also, has short hair, not long hair. He's more, like you said, contemporary Greek or whatever.
Yeah.
He's not. And just so people know, it's not like just a few people exaggerating. Jesus, this is right here. It says Biblical Archaeology Society. Did Jesus have a magic wand before a million ago? It seems so. If you're to judge from the earliest Christian depictions of art. Oh, okay. So it's not a few atheists like making some shit up. The Bible archaeology, which by the way is a bunch of Christians that just happen to be at least somewhat honest enough to admit that there's stuff that relates to Jesus and things like that don't actually support like the Christian view now. that there was different views. Oh, because reality. And anyway, so a lot of people have their opinions now. It's not totally, to me, accurate. And so go ahead and read Osiris.
Okay. Osiris was the god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation in ancient Egyptian religion. He was classically depicted as a green-skinned deity with a pharaoh's beard, partially mummy-wrapped at the legs, wearing a distinctive atif crown, and holding a symbolic crook and flail. He was one of the first to be associated with the mummy wrap. When his brother Set cut him up into pieces after killing him, with her sister Nephthys, Osiris's wife, Isis, searched all over Egypt to find each part of Osiris. She collected all but one, Osiris's genitalia. She then wrapped his body up, enabling him to return to life. Osiris was widely worshipped until the decline of ancient Egyptian religion during the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire.
Right, and so as we're addressing the Christian thing, right, because that's also what this, I normally, like as I told you before, really wouldn't focus on this. This is more like atheist stuff against Christianity, which is not exactly how I do my, I do more address mythology and archaeology, anthropology. So this right here is my blog, Debunking Christianity. So what do? If I address Christianity, I like to address the Jesus story from the Bible perspective, because this is, to me, easier. The Christians already agree with the Bible, right?
Yeah, like you'd expect them to.
So it's a lot easier to debunk Jesus using their Bible than it is to say, well, this mythology you don't agree with, this mythology you think is all fake, but Jesus is real, that this is going to debunk your stuff, when I think it's easier to say, oh, you believe in Jesus as a person? I don't. Did you read what the Bible said? Jesus is a good person. Did you read what the Bible said? Because I don't know that doesn't contradict what you're saying. Jesus is only love. Will you read the Jesus quote? Do you see what it says? If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Right? That's some like crazy shit right there.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme, like preconditions to just talk with the guy.
But you get what my point is. So when they say Jesus is all love, and I could go, well, how about this verse? How do you explain what that is? And it makes them uncomfortable. I like stuff where they feel they're on the back foot, and I'm using their own book that they say is 100% true without flaw. Okay, great. So what does that mean? And if you see right here, it says also, I don't try to discredit a possible human being that could have been, named Jesus, but debunk any man was ever any God. That's the stuff that I care about.
That's the difference. Yeah.
So that's what I'm just going to do. The point is, I don't get into the arguments that some atheists do, like this, trying to use little pieces of mythology and then say, yeah, see, now Jesus is not real. I'd rather just go back to the Bible. Do you see what it says? The Bible says that God is greater than Jesus. Not me. The Bible does. So they can't be the same person. Where it says, my Father is greater than I, John 14:28. My Father is greater than all, John 10:29. Jesus is equal or lesser to God? John 10:30. I and my Father are one. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
But John 14:28 says, I go unto my Father, for my Father is greater than I. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. Which one is it?
Right. So
are you the same or are you different?
You get my point. And there's a bunch. I'm going to read just real quick through a few of them just to give you the point. That's how I like to. If I was going to debunk Jesus, I'm going to go after him with the gut shots, the ones that it literally. Jesus descends from which son of David? Now remember, if he descends from something, that means that he can only have a mother and father, right? Although there's a problem, because since his father was an angel, he would only descend from one person, correct?
Yeah, you'd think so, if he was an angel.
Right? I mean, the Spirit of God or whatever impregnated Mary, right? So it couldn't possibly have more than one father. So Jesus described which father of David, and it says the father name is Solomon, Matthew 1:6. But then in a different verse of Luke 3:31, it says Nathan. Oh, how can it be both? Then it says, how did Simon Peter find out that Jesus was the Christ? Right? The Bible's going to be the truth. Now we're going for the answers. So Matthew says, by a revelation from heaven. But John says his brother Andrew told him. Okay, so only one of those can be correct. So the Bible has errors itself. We don't need to go to mythology that they may not believe and then try to point to and make them feel doubtful. I can even make them feel doubtful using the Bible. And then, did Herod think Jesus was John the Baptist? And this should be a cut and dry one answer, right?
Yeah, you'd think.
Matthew and Mark both say yes, he did. But Luke says no, he did not. Okay, so one of those are wrong, right? It's a yes and no answer. It's not both. Then, did John the Baptist recognize Jesus before his baptism? I mean, because we're talking about the Bible. Should be inherently without errors. Yeah. Well, it has to have errors because Matthew says yes, that John the Baptist recognized Jesus, but John says no, he did not. So only one of those can be correct. It means one of them is obviously false. Like I said, you start questioning that story of Jesus' accuracy is obviously not accurate. Just look at the Bible. When Jesus met Lazarus, was Lazarus' daughter already dead? Matthew says yes, quoting him, saying, my daughter just died. But Mark says, no, saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Once again. And so people understand, too, that the Bible the books have been put in an arrangement that actually is not how they happen. Because the Christian Bible has often Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Well, it was probably more likely written Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. So they put Mark in the second one because the ending of Mark, like the Passion of Christ that Mel Gibson made, it just ends sort of with Jesus dying. It doesn't actually talk about him being reborn again. So that's an uncomfortable thing for a religion where he needs to kind of be born again.
Yeah.
So they're already not, it's not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're moving the books around and trying to make the story sound better than it is if it was just the plain truth. So, and then you read the story, and then there's obvious things that contradict. And there's other Bible contradiction where his name is to be called Emmanuel, right? And then another verse says his name is to be called Jesus. Well, one of those can't be correct. Another one says an angel spoke to Joseph. And then a different one, Luke says the angel spoke to Mary. Okay, wait a minute now.
Yeah.
And then Matthew says accumulation occurred after Mary conceived Jesus. But Luke says it occurred before. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wait a minute now. You can't have both things and it still be true. And what I'm trying to show is there's not one error or possible error in the story of Jesus that people think is true in the Bible that supposedly is without error, written by God or inspired by God. It literally is multiple problems. So Matthew says there were 28 generations from David to Jesus. But Luke says, no, there was 43. See,
well, that's a pretty big difference in generations.
Right, somebody's not
Yeah.
right. That's all I'm trying to say. Debunking Jesus, I think there's plenty enough in the Bible alone to make you question the story of Jesus. And then Mark says that Jacob was Joseph's father, but Luke says Hale was Joseph's father. Oh, wait a minute now. You can't even get the father? And then in Numbers, Jesus enjoys the making of vows and oaths. But in Matthew, it says Jesus forbids doing so.
Yeah, that's one I know about.
Right? Saying they
Jesus
rise
isn't
from
supposed
the
to like
devil. Wait a minute. So God does it, but Jesus says it's wrong and evil?
Yeah, and then earlier he says that God and himself are the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so...
God himself prohibits forever eating blood and fat. Jesus and Paul say that such rules don't matter, that they are only human injunctions. Yeah, but God's the one that said it, supposedly.
So, yeah, what is it?
Right, you see what I'm saying? There's so many nonsense. And then also it's in 2 Corinthians, an unnamed man known to Paul went up to heaven and came back, right? But Enoch was translated to heaven. So it's someone different. Again, and then Elijah went up to heaven, right? And then Kings. And then a different one, right? Different verse. It says, only the Son of Man, Jesus, has ever ascended to heaven. Wait a minute. There was literally 3 other people, right?
There's literally an entire book talking about Enoch's ascension to heaven.
You know what I'm saying?
See how...
Like, wait a minute. You can't have 3 other people. And then they're like, oh, no, just Jesus. Wait a minute.
Yeah, you got more than a few wires crossed.
Yeah, more than a few, right? But this is the God-given book. It's perfect and without error. Yeah, right. So, and these are not little errors either. So, obviously not proofreading their own stuff. So, 1 Corinthians, God made the wisdom of the world foolish, so to shame the wise. But Proverbs and other verses say, happy is the man who finds wisdom. Get wisdom. So they both get. And then Jesus was filled with wisdom by favor of God. It's like, wait. And then, of course, there's another verse that says, wisdom is foolish.
So if Jesus was filled with wisdom, you're saying Jesus is like entirely foolish.
Right.
Like, what in the world?
there's a lot of stuff that fails. So we'll get out of that thing. Go back to the other stuff we were doing on the rising and dying gods. I just wanted to say that if I'm going to go after Jesus, I would rather go after it with some really good stuff.
Like, I've seen quite a few atheist debates and arguments, like some pretty good ones.
Right.
Matt Dillahunty, Atheist Experience, and your stuff too. But I haven't spent a lot of time just looking at a list of all the contradictions in the Bible. I've only heard
there's way more
pointed out.
There's way more. I just highlighted a few. They relate to Jesus. I'm just saying it should at the least make you realize you can't just take the Jesus story as it's presented to you, even if you want to believe the Bible.
Yeah, even if you want to believe it, you got some thinking to do. Like, out of all the different accounts of Jesus's life and resurrection, which one are you going to choose if you're a believer?
Oh, and there's a whole bunch of issues with that stuff too. There's different times, different places, different things happen, different miracles. John's stuff sounds totally different than the other 3. Like it was, not using even the same books. Yeah, there's a bunch of problems. One of these days we'll go into Jesus stuff. But like I said, my thing is not to try to debunk Christianity particularly. Just all religion's false. And if they're giving you supernatural stories are false. And so go ahead and read this next one.
Tammuz, Damuzid, or Damuzi, or Tammuz.
So it's known by the Sumerians, Akkadians, Hebrew.
Is an ancient Mesopotamian and Levantine deity associated with agriculture and shepherds, who was also the first and primary consort of the goddess Inanna, later known as Ishtar. In Sumerian mythology, Dumuzid's sister was Gesh-Tinanna, the goddess of agriculture, fertility, and dream interpretation. In the Sumerian king list, Dumuzid is listed as an antediluvian king of the city of Bad Tibira, and also an early king of the city of Uruk.
When it says antediluvian, it means before the flood,
yeah,
the Bible flood or whatever, or before the Sumerian flood.
Yeah, just before the flood, when there were a bunch of cities. Yeah,
right. Just in case if people don't know what that means, antediluvian.
In Inanna's descent into the underworld, Inanna perceives that Dumuzid has failed to properly mourn her death, and when she returns from the underworld, allows the Gala demons to drag him down to the underworld as her replacement. Inanna later regrets this decision and decrees that Dumuzid will spend half of the year in the underworld, but the other half of the year with her, while his sister Gesh-Tinanna stays in the underworld in his place, thus resulting in the cycle of the seasons. In the Sumerian poem, Inanna prefers the farmer. Dumuzid competes against the farmer Enkimdu for Inanna's hand in marriage.
Right, so let's pause for a second. So that one academic who was a Syriologist, professor, he was arguing with the Christian saying, how can you say that there's no rising and dying gods? Because how do you explain Ionis descent to the underworld? But if you realize that what it says here too, that it's not just her that did this, was a rising and dying deity, but so was, Dumuzid, or whatever, that going half of the year, into the underworld also.
Yeah, and then the other half of the year with her.
Right. Just showing that again would make that a rising and dying deity, or a dying and rising deity.
Yeah, because he's only alive for half the year.
Exactly. Yeah. But it also shows a connection to the agriculture, which we already kind of talked about a little bit. So go to the next one, Adonis.
In Greek mythology, Adonis was the mortal lover of the goddess Aphrodite and Persephone. He was famous and considered to be the ideal of male beauty in classical antiquity. The myth goes that Adonis was gored by a wild boar during a hunting trip and died in Aphrodite's arms as she wept. His blood mingled with her tears and became the anemone flower. Aphrodite declared that Adonis, the Adonia festival to commemorate his tragic death, celebrated by women every year in midsummer. During this festival, Greek women would plant gardens of Adonis, small pots containing fast-growing plants, which they would set on top of their houses in the hot sun. The plants would sprout, but soon wither and die. Then, the women would mourn the death of Adonis, tearing their clothes and beating their breasts in a public display of grief. The Greeks considered Adonis's cult to be of Near Eastern origin. Adonis's name comes from a Canaanite word meaning Lord, and most modern scholars consider the story of Aphrodite and Adonis to be derived from a Levantine version of the earlier Mesopotamian myth of Inanna, Ishtar, and Tammuz. In late 19th and early 20th century scholarship of religion, Adonis was widely seen as a prime example of the archetypal dying and rising god. His name is often applied in modern times to handsome youths, of whom he is considered the archetype.
Right, and go to the next one.
Attis was the consort of Cybele in Phrygian and Greek mythology. His priests were eunuchs, the Galli, as explained by origin myths pertaining to Attis castrating himself. Attis was also a Phrygian vegetation deity. His self-mutilation, death, and resurrection represents the fruits of the earth, which die in winter only to rise again in the spring. According to Ovid's Metamorphoses, Attis transformed himself into a pine tree. An Attis cult began around 1250 BCE in Dindimon, today's Murat Dagi of Gediz, Kutabia, Turkey. He was originally a local semi-deity of Phrygia, associated with the great Phrygian trading city of Pessinus, which lay under the lee of Mount Agdistis. The mountain was personified as a daemon, whom foreigners associated with the great mother Cybele.
Yeah, we'll go to the next one, but you see that one is also a 3,000, almost 300-year-old deity. So it's before Jesus.
Way back.
And it's once again doing that similar sort of a thing of dying and resurrection. So just going back to like when people say that there's no category, or like I said, it's not a big one, but certainly it's ridiculous when they say there's no deities at all. Like what are you talking about?
Yeah. Read this one?
Yeah.
Okay. In ancient Greek religion and mythology, Zagreus was a god sometimes identified with an Orphic Dionysus, a son of Zeus and Persephone, who was dismembered by the Titans and reborn. In the earliest mention of Zagreus, he is paired with Gaia and called the highest god, though perhaps only in reference to the gods of the underworld. Aeschylus, however, links Zagreus with Hades, possibly as Hades' son, or as Hades himself, noting Hades' identity as Zeus's Katathonius alter ego. Timothy Gantz postulated that Zagreus, originally the son of Hades and Persephone, later emerged with the Orphic Dionysus, the son of Zeus and Persephone.
All right, we can go to another one because I basically just want to show that they're all doing this rising and dying again, that it's not a made-up, type of god.
In ancient Greek religion and myth, Dionysus is the god of winemaking, orchards and fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theater. He was also known as Bacchus by the Greeks, a name later adopted by the Romans, for a frenzy he is said to induce called Bacchia. As Dionysus Eleutherius, the liberator, his wine, music, and ecstatic dance free his followers from self-conscious fear and care, and subvert the oppressive restraints of the powerful. His Thyrsus,
just skip it, it's fine.
His Thyrsus, a fennel stem scepter, sometimes wound with ivy and dripping with honey, is both a beneficent wand and a weapon used to destroy those who oppose his cult and the freedoms he represents. Those who partake of his mysteries are believed to become possessed and empowered by the god himself. His origins are uncertain, and his cults took many forms. Some are described by ancient sources as Thracian, others as Greek. In Orphism, he was variously firstly a son of Zeus and Persephone, a chthonic or underworld aspect of Zeus, or the twice-born son of Zeus and the mortal Semele. The Eleusinian mysteries identify him with Iacchus, the son or husband of Demeter. Most accounts say he was born in Thrace, traveled abroad, and arrived in Greece as a foreigner. His attribute of foreignness as an arriving outsider god may be inherent and essential to his cults, as he is a god of epiphany, sometimes called the god who comes.
Right. So just to go on to this, so it's not like all the versions of this myth involve a rising in deity element, but there is a version that does link it to that. But since he has multiple versions, it's like, because if you read down where it says here, it says the cult of Dionysus is also the cult of souls. And then it says it feeds the dead, the blood offerings, acts as divine communicator between living and dead, sometimes categorized as a dying and rising god. He can't be all the time because that's not his, main attribute in every, version. Then there's Jesus, which I'm sure you might know a little bit about.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar. I think I've heard the name before.
Yeah, go read some of the Christian mythology of Jesus.
Okay, yeah, I'll start from the top. In Christian mythology, Jesus Christ, also referred to as Jesus of Nazareth, and many other names and titles, was a 1st century Jewish preacher and religious leader. He is a central figure of Christianity, the world's largest religion. Most Christian denominations believe Jesus to be the incarnation of God the Son and the awaited Messiah, or Christ, a descendant from the Davidic line that is prophesied in the Old Testament. Virtually all modern scholars of antiquity agree that Jesus existed historically. Accounts of Jesus' life are contained in the Gospels, especially the 4 canonical Gospels in the New Testament. Academic research has yielded various views on the historical reliability of the Gospels and how closely they reflect the historical Jesus. Jesus was circumcised at 8 days old, was baptized by John the Baptist as a young adult, and after 40 days and nights of fasting in the wilderness, began his own ministry. He was an itinerant teacher who interpreted the law of God with divine authority and was often referred to as rabbi. Jesus often debated with his fellow Jews on how to best follow God, engaged in healings, taught in parables, and gathered followers, among whom 12 were appointed as his chosen apostles. He was arrested in Jerusalem and tried by the Jewish authorities, turned over to the Roman government, and crucified on the order of Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect of Judea. After his death, his followers became convinced that he rose from the dead, and following his ascension, the community they formed eventually became the early Christian church that expanded as a worldwide movement. It is hypothesized that accounts of his teachings and life were initially conserved by oral transmission, which was the source of the written Gospels.
Right, this is a thing I always say. Why was Jesus silent? Imagine if the Christian view is correct, that this person came down with the goal to die for the entire world's sin throughout time and to give this new message that was a different version and a completely different religion in a sense than Judaism. Why would Jesus not write anything down? Imagine, not one word. I mean, people say, well, Jesus stated. Well, those are other people's words about what supposedly they orally heard or, and or got passed down. Even if it was written, it was still not written by Jesus. None of his disciples also are known to have written any of the part of the Bible. So we have no firsthand supposed accounts. Right? That also should cause a problem. And then think of this. Let's say that Jesus is illiterate, but he knows God's message, right? Knows he needs to do this to start this new church. Why did he not tell all of his disciples? There's no verse in the Bible that says Jesus said, please go right down so you can all become Christians. I mean, this is like really basic stuff to me that, of course, why wouldn't that be the case if this person is God? Even if, because some people go, well, back then they were not literate or, okay, let's say he wasn't. He knew people that were.
Yeah, there were scribes back then in the area.
And he could have said, could you try to find someone?
Yeah,
or
just like
one
go to the nearest
day,
city.
Please. Never said that. So I'm just saying, I just find it absolutely ridiculous to think that somehow a actual deity is supposedly comes down, does all the dies for everyone's sin, cares about everybody, has a whole message he needs to get across to everyone, or else they'll go to hell, right?
Yeah.
And yet doesn't write anything down. None of his disciples that were supposedly there, and there's 12 of them, none of them write anything down. None of them ask anyone to write anything down. Jesus doesn't ask anyone to write anything down, but I'm supposed to believe that this is the word of God by people that weren't totally there, and no, even Jesus never said write anything down, or his disciples. I find it absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, in the Gospels, they were apparently written down like decades after all this happened.
At least 60 to 90 years afterwards.
Yeah, that's a big problem. A lot of that can be
Right,
embellished.
a problem on top of a problem. So go ahead and read, just to get my thinking, right? So Christian theology, go ahead and read.
Christian theology includes the beliefs that Jesus was conceived by the Holy Spirit, was born of a virgin named Mary, performed miracles, founded the Christian church, died by crucifixion as a sacrifice to achieve atonement for sin, rose from the dead, and descended into heaven, from where he will return. Commonly, Christians believe Jesus enables people to be reconciled to God. The Nicene Creed asserts that Jesus will judge the living and the dead, either before or after their bodily resurrection, an event tied to the second coming of Jesus in Christian eschatology. The great majority of Christians worship Jesus as the incarnation of God the Son, the second of three persons of the Trinity. The birth of Jesus is celebrated annually, generally on the 25th of December, as Christmas. His crucifixion is honored on Good Friday, and his resurrection on Easter Sunday.
Oh, which is coming up, right? Easter Sunday.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. The world's most widely used calendar era, in which the current year is CE 2025, or 2025 CE, is based on the approximate birth date of Jesus. In Islam, Jesus is considered the Messiah and a prophet of God, who was sent to the Israelites and will return to earth before the day of judgment. Muslims believe Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, but was neither God nor a son of God. Most Muslims do not believe that he was killed or crucified, but that God raised him into heaven while he was still alive. Jesus is also revered in the Baha'i faith, Druze, and Rastafari. In contrast, Judaism rejects the belief that Jesus was the awaited Messiah, arguing that he did not fulfill messianic prophecies, was not lawfully anointed, and was neither divine nor resurrected. The study of Jesus is comparative mythology. In comparative mythology is the examination.
By the way, that's what I do the most of, is kind of more comparative mythology. So you know,
the examination of the narratives of the life of Jesus in the Christian Gospels, traditions, and theology, as they relate to Christianity and other religions. Although the vast majority of New Testament scholars and historians of the ancient Near East agree that Jesus existed as a historical figure,
just so people know, just because I say that I don't 100% agree with that, there's all tons of evidence to prove that Jesus is a myth. The entire thing, I'm saying there was never even a person. I also do not agree that there's tons of evidence that Jesus existed as a historical figure. I think that both cases are not confirmed. I do, like I said, so because the reason I bring this up is there's atheists that believe the entire thing is a complete myth. There was never even a person. And there's, of course, the Christians that think that he was, and some scholars, like I was saying, think that there absolutely was a person, just may not have been a god. And I'm not agreeing that either. I'm not agreeing that we're so much evidence that it's for a fact that the whole thing is a myth. I think that most of it's probably a myth, but there could have been a person. But I am not stating that I agree that there's enough evidence that we know that there absolutely was a person. That's so I'm sort of in between, I guess.
Most secular historians also agree that the Gospels contain large quantities of ahistorical, legendary details mixed in with historical information about Jesus' life. The synoptic Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke are heavily shaped by Jewish tradition, with the Gospel of Matthew deliberately portraying Jesus as a new Moses. Although it is highly unlikely that the authors of the synoptic Gospels directly based any of their accounts on pagan mythology, it is possible that they may have subtly shaped their accounts of Jesus' healing miracles to resemble familiar Greek stories about miracles associated with Asclepius, the god of healing and medicine. The birth narratives of Matthew and Luke are usually seen by secular historians as legends designed to fulfill Jewish expectations about the Messiah. The Gospel of John bears indirect influence from Platonism via earlier Jewish deuterocanonical texts, and may also have been influenced in less obvious ways by the cult of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, though this possibility is still disputed. Later Christians...
So that's like I was saying before. I do think that there could be mild evidence that, like you said about the Trinity, which is obviously older and pre-Jesus, and some of these other myths having elements. What I am saying is it's not so obvious that it inherently makes it all a myth. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's weak. I don't, saying this is disputed. I would think, to me, the dispute is it's not really a great argument. There's a lot better arguments. It's not that it's a complete, false lie invalid. It's just weak.
Yeah, because he shares like these themes with
Right.
other older gods, it doesn't mean like Jesus, the man, like just like a everyday rabbi who got crucified. It doesn't mean he was entirely made up.
Correct.
It could be
the one doesn't have to lead to the other. In other words, every single mythology part of it could be mythology from other stuff, and yet there still be a human being that died. I also don't agree that there's 100% evidence that someone was crucified. The whole way that the story is told and everything just sounds absolutely ridiculous. Was not because Jesus was supposedly seen as the king of the Jews, because as some people try to, I feel, reference, because that was actually slander against the Jews. I think probably later, really, than at the time that Jesus would have been alive. The area he comes from, Galilee, was known for radicals against, in a sense, Roman rule. So a rabbi from the radical area makes more sense of why the Romans would have killed this guy anyways.
I've finished what you were saying.
So I'm just saying, so to me, if you put it in context, and also the Romans wrote down shit tons of stuff of what they did and why, just like the story of the baby. When Bethlehem, I feel it's absolutely nonsense. Nothing in the story says that matches Roman records. And if Romans were taking a consensus for tax purposes, which is why they would have done it, or to see like who's in what area, so they know what dissidents, how many are there or whatever, amounts of people. Asking them to all move to different cities they originally are from and not where they're living currently would have had people being able to be all over the place, and thus you can't get an accurate account of where they're really living.
Yeah.
And so where they're living is where they're making their money and spending their taxes, right? It's just, the whole story sounds bizarrely stupid and not accurate to the thing. And then, like I said, going back to the Jesus is being punished. So it acts as if Herod cares if one Jew who's a dissident gets tortured. Literally killed shit tons of Jews all the time, especially dissidents. Wouldn't have given a flipping shit about one person over another, especially in the story how it puts it that he feels bad because the Jews want him dead. And he goes, why don't you do Barabbas, the murderer and thing? I'll let one of them go. The whole thing. What? The dude's a murderer. He would have killed him too. So I think that some of the story is just so unbelievably not believable.
For me, it almost seems like in these decades after this all apparently, supposedly happened, it's almost like they were being persecuted by the Romans, like the early Christian church.
Right.
It's almost like they made a charter myth. Like they took this story, they either completely made it up or it was inspired by this rabbi that they knew about, and they added on all these different themes from the religions that were going on around that time, either in the Middle East or all the way over.
I do think that some of that happened. I also think there's a possibility. It's when it goes back to where I said I don't agree there's one person. I don't know that it was one person. What if it was 4 or 3? There's a lot of people calling themselves the Messiah. Like I said, where he was coming from, Jesus in Nazareth and Galilee, these areas were fucking rebelling. These were not, areas where. But anyways, the point is, I'm trying to say is that if you had caught dissidents that you felt were an enemy of the state, the fact that what happened, it just makes no sense. He wouldn't have cared. He certainly wouldn't have cared, if they didn't like him. Like he felt, because the story kind of like, he feels bad for Jesus. He wants to try to get him off. What? No. I don't buy that shit. This guy's a murdering tyrant. It's like saying Trump feels, empathy for people. No, he doesn't. You buy that shit, you bought a good one. But I'm just saying, so, and like I said, I'm not saying there couldn't have been a person, but I also think it's not unlikely, like you were saying, that it's a myth made after, added elements, maybe even added from multiple people's, life experience to try to make one person. Anyways, but like I said, okay, forget all that. Look at the Bible, like we already quoted. The story of Jesus doesn't match up to the story of Jesus in the Bible, using the Bible. So you don't even have to take all this other outside stuff, which probably is absolutely, valid, or at least reasonable that it could have happened. You can throw all that out, just use the Bible, which the people believe, and it can debunk itself. So I just, whatever.
Yeah, it has some issues.
Right, so you can keep reading.
Yeah. Although it is highly unlikely that the authors of the Synoptic Gospels directly based any of their accounts on pagan mythology, Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, though this possibility is still disputed. Later Christian traditions about Jesus were probably influenced by Greco-Roman religion and mythology. Much of Jesus' traditional iconography is apparently derived from Mediterranean deities such as Hermes, Asclepius, Seriphus, and Zeus, and his traditional birth date on the 25th of December, which was not declared as such until the 5th century, was at one point named a holiday in honor of the Roman sun god Sol Invictus.
Right. So once again, just like the original Jesus with short hair and carried a wand, he didn't get a 25th of December, birthday until the 5th century, which is like 500 years after he's dead.
That's a lot of time for stuff to happen.
Or do you see what I'm saying about if you really look at this Jesus story in itself, without even caring about outside myths, it really doesn't match up. I mean, things people think are this day is so holy. Is it though? And it is for what God exactly? And when did that happen? And why would we only start doing it 500 years after?
That's what I was going to say. Like, it took them 5 centuries to realize that was an important day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 centuries to forget it was a Roman sun god.
That too.
Go ahead.
At around the same time, Christianity was expanding in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. The Mithraic cult was also flourishing. Though the relationship between the two religions is still under dispute, Christian apologists at the time noted similarities between them, which some scholars have taken as evidence of borrowing, but which are more likely a result of shared cultural environment. More general comparisons have also been made between the accounts about Jesus' birth and resurrection and stories of other divine or heroic figures from across the Mediterranean world, including supposed dying and rising gods such as Tammuz, Adonis, Attis, and Osiris, although the concept of dying and rising gods itself has received scholarly criticism.
Right, and like I told you, the scholarly criticism is mainly that it's not some major category, but it's not really scholarly criticism as there's no such thing as that kind of God. Which the Christians apologists try to say, there's no such thing. Yeah, it's all fake. It's all made up. No, not all made up.
No.
Well, it is all made up. All of it's fake. Your religion too.
Yeah.
Keep reading.
An odd thing religions have in common. Moses did not write the Torah. Jesus did not write anything in the Bible. Muhammad did not write anything in the Quran. The Buddha did
by the way, real quick on Muhammad. Muhammad, just like Jesus, never asked anyone to create their religion of Islam. Never said, make a book, the Quran. In fact, the early writings a lot of times were oral only, and some people in Islam still to this day try to learn the entire thing of the Quran orally. And, which I thought was really funny when I found out, that they actually compiled the Quran, some orally, and some people had written on like camel bones and like little pieces of paper and rocks and everything. So they told everybody, bring all the stuff you have. So everybody came and they brought their things and they told their stories orally, and they tried to sort of put it together. Then they realized later, this is the second caliph or third caliph, I can't remember now, because I'm not like totally into remembering Islam stuff. Because like I said, I do comparative mythology more. So, but anyways, Islam, they had like 4 versions or something of the Quran, and he has all of them brought the versions and burns them all except one version that they want to do, and then they just only promote that version to try to make it, well, because like the Bible, look at where Jesus, where there's contradictions and contradictions and contradictions, and you're trying to put different books and things together and different. So it's not like Islam didn't realize, hey, that kind of sounds fishy. Let's not do that. How you do that is make one thing and then you do it only one way. Just like pushing one language. They used to do it in a few different languages, like the Quran and stuff, which is reasonable because it was in a sense broad where the people were doing this stuff. One in Iraq, one in Iran, one in Saudi Arabia. You know, there's multiple areas and Bedouins are doing something sort of different, and they're because they're moving around, and so they're taking all these things. And they're saying, okay, forget all this. Everyone has different thing. They try to make it one language, one book, one thing, which to me just shows it's actually not true. All this forced effort outside to make it perfect, just like the Bible shows it's not perfect. All this human effort was required to make it look perfect, meaning it wasn't. Go ahead. So
The Buddha
didn't write anything.
The Buddha did not write anything in Buddhism. Sikhism's Guru Nanak did not write the Guru Granth Sahib.
Which is their holy book that they think is actually like a person. That's the 13th guru, the book itself I'm talking about. But anyways, keep going.
Confucius is not known to have written any of the books of Confucianism himself. It is likely that Taoism's Lao Tzu did not write the Tao Te Ching.
Right, and Taoism. So all of the world religions books have leaders that never wrote anything in that religion. And it's an odd thing that religions have in common.
Yeah, they're all secondhand accounts.
Yeah.
Like
and
written years and years after these like really
truth.
important leaders, like these really important spiritual leaders passed away. If they were even like real people, you know?
Well, that's the other thing too. There's a probably Confucius was a real person. Lao Tao they think was not. Moses, they think, was not. Jesus, questionable. Maybe it was a real person. Muhammad was a real person. Buddha is also questionable if that's a real person or exactly what's going on with that person. Guru Nanak probably was a real person. But I mean, so some of them on there are questionable anyways. So go ahead and read my thoughts about this.
So what I am basically addressing in this blog is dying and rising gods, a less than good argument used sometimes by atheists against Jesus. It is not a strong argument that because a few god myths older than Jesus have a few similar things, that some atheists try and say Jesus, the story, copied, thus Jesus was not true. I agree that most of the Jesus story is likely myth and not worth believing, but there are better arguments with better facts. The dying and rising gods are weak at best and unrelated at worst. Scholars don't buy it, and I have never seen it persuade the believers in Jesus. The same goes for Jesus as a complete myth, a Jesus mythism that some atheists push. I don't waste time on that. I debunk Jesus using the Bible. My stuff is powerful and challenging to those who claim to know who Jesus is according to their Bible. That has made people doubt, and I want to address, and what I address has made it uncomfortable for church leaders I have challenged with my stuff. I will read some tomorrow. Here is a link to that called Debunking Jesus.
Right. I guess I should take that out of the blog where I'll read some tomorrow because that's actually for you. Because a lot of times, like before I do a video, especially on one I'm not real familiar with, I try to go back and familiarize myself and give my thoughts because I want it to be, for when we record, to be, more thoughtful. So go ahead and read the Christ myth theory. I know Aaron Roth filled this. Anyways, there's a couple atheists that are famous that feel that this is true. And like I told you, I'm not saying that I know that it's not true. I just don't think it's got enough evidence that I feel confident that the whole thing is false and there can't have been a human being. But like I said, too, I also say that there could have been multiple human beings. So I don't know that the other side is valid either, that there's for sure just one person. Like, I don't think that's good either. Go ahead and read.
The Christ myth theory, also known as the Jesus myth theory, Jesus mythism, or the Jesus ahistoricity theory, is the fringe view that the story of Jesus is a work of mythology with no historical substance. Alternatively, in terms given by Bart Ehrman, paraphrasing Earl Doherty, it is the view that the historical Jesus did not exist, or if he did, he had virtually nothing to do with the founding of Christianity.
Now, that last part, I do think that even if a Jesus existed, I do agree with this part. He had nothing to do with the founding of Christianity. I think that's obvious. If he did, then he would have said, go make Christianity, go make, save the world, go do this stuff.
Or he would have written the stuff down himself.
Wrote stuff down himself. Asked someone or asked his disciples, or the disciples that knew him would have said, we need to write stuff down, because they thought that his people don't grasp because about the second coming. The people that there's a part in the Bible, I can't remember the verse off the top of my head. It said that those of you that are there seeing Jesus' death will not die before Jesus come back. And so to me, that gives you a reason why they wouldn't write down this thing. It's an AI overview. I'll just read it.
Okay.
It says, Jesus' statement that some of you standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And that's Matthew 16:21. It is widely interpreted by scholars that a reference to Transfiguration, Matthew 17:1 and 2, which occurred shortly after, predicting a rapid spread of the church rather than his final second coming. Yeah, that's what they would like it to say. that they see, because they had to come up with a thing that's what happened. Because I don't know, will not taste death before the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. I think that's a pretty, but the Christians have to make apologetics. They have to make an excuse for how somehow that doesn't say what it really means. Because if it means what it's saying, it means that people are going to, way back when Jesus first practically died, that before those people that in a sense were around at that time, before they died, they were supposed to, that Jesus was going to come back. Which also would make sense then why no one wrote anything down.
Well, yeah, because if you know he's going to come back in your lifetime, well, way back then.
Why would you?
Yeah.
It's an apocalyptic cult. Jesus is coming back right now. So no reason. That's why, Mark isn't written down until about 90, after, CE, whatever, after Jesus' death, 90 years. Because they finally realize, oh shit, I think that he's not coming. So to me, that's when they come up with the new thing. Oh, okay, well, that didn't really mean what it sounded like.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, like, how much of what's written in the Gospels, like how many words they put in this guy's mouth, if he was even just one guy, like you said.
That's my statement, is that I'm not saying I know for a fact there wasn't just one guy. I'm saying I don't know for a fact there wasn't more than one guy that could have been compiled into a story. And I do not believe that anyone has ever presented enough evidence that for sure it was only one guy. Just like I feel also not totally with the other people saying that Jesus, the entire thing was a myth and there couldn't have been a human being. I feel that's also, to me, not a very strong argument, even though they say things on either side. But I certainly feel very strongly that Jesus never founded Christianity.
No, it was the scholars.
People after him
afterward who did most of the work. Yeah, putting the books together, deciding which ones go in which order.
Correct.
Like all arbitrarily.
So
pretty much
that I'm pretty sure of, is that Jesus had nothing to do. So I feel like right there, the Christ myth theory, they're trying to put both those together. I feel that that's justified. You could think Jesus was a historical person and also think Jesus had nothing to do with Christianity. He was a rabbi, a Jew. He was nothing to do. You know what I'm saying? In fact, he even there's a verse where it says about healing or casting out the demons or healing a sick child of a Canaanite woman. And she comes to him and says, oh, could you please, heal my child? And he goes, no, I only have come here for the children of Israel. And she says, well, can't you just, do it as a favor, whatever? He's like, no, I don't give my food to dogs. And she's like, well, don't you give dogs the crumbs? And then he's like, oh, because you have great faith, I'll go ahead and heal the child. Literally, to me, showing he didn't come for the whole world. He doesn't care about all children equally. He literally was saying, then after he dies, supposedly when he comes back, he's like, now I want you to go spread my message to the whole world. So they literally, like you said, put words in his mouth.
That's just weird.
Didn't even come out of his mouth while alive. And so I find that to be, come on, he's not the founder of Christianity.
That's distasteful.
Right.
Like, you have one verse saying, like, he loves everybody. And then you have a verse like that where he only cares about a select few people in one region. Like, as if everybody else is a nobody to him.
It's not cool at all. I mean, I feel it, and people always get mad. In fact, even had atheists get mad that I use that verse, and they're like, "Oh, I don't think that's fair. Jesus eventually, healed her," and I'm like, "Oh, he did, right? I don't know what ethical doctor that said the shit he said. Just think, doctor, right? Jesus can heal anyone. Magical fucking God being. He would not help a sick child because he had only come to help the Jews. You would say that dude is a fucking racist or an ethnocentric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
Yeah, if you're only helping like a certain ethnicity in one part of the world,
when you have the ability to help all of them and it doesn't actually do anything, what is Jesus got a magical power that he has to eat enough grapes to be able to do something? So he can only help 4 people because he's only got 4 grapes, or what? You get my point. Like, what is there like a limit on how many? So he can turn water to wine, which doesn't matter. Fuck all. Right? Get a bunch of people drunk as opposed to just having water, or heal a child. So I'll go ahead and let people get drunk for the fuck of it so I can see I have magical abilities so I can show off. But healing a child, no. Beg me first.
And
gross.
He was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. This lady asked for help, and he compares them to dogs.
You read the verse?
I'm looking at
what it says.
I'll read the whole thing. 22. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to Jesus, crying out, Lord, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. That's horrible.
Right?
Tell
me that I am somehow taking that out of context. Fuck, get the shit out of here. That is literally fucking horrid, vile shit. If someone did it today, when Trump does stuff like that, we call him a racist.
Oh, yeah.
Justifiable. So if supposed Jesus said that, he's a fucking scumbag.
Yeah, and even that whole section, there's this woman saying that her kid is fucking possessed by a demon. And I'm guessing the kid's somewhere nearby, maybe?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be either the son of God or God himself in disguise. Right. And there's a demon right there, and he's not going to do anything about it.
not a thing, right?
That is so odd.
Well, it's disgusting, right? And unethical, and certainly unhumanitarian. Certainly doesn't match up to Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, unless you're Canaanite.
No, he doesn't. He just loves a certain small group of children. He doesn't love all of them.
Isn't that kind of gross, really? And like I said, using the Bible to debunk the Jesus, I feel is way more powerful and harder for them to come up with than otherwise. But I think the Jesus story in general, look at the Jesus story. The legend of Jesus is a horrific story of a psychopath God that will not forgive without a blood, torture, and sacrifice. I forgive people all the time, and I don't require that. I feel like if God was a good God, would he really require this? I mean, who's making him require it? He's like, I'm pissed off. I need somebody's got to fucking suffer. Period. Okay, Jesus, you suffer because otherwise I'm making everybody else suffer. None of that's okay. None of that we go, oh, well, that's a just person. Someone has to suffer. He has to torture somebody. The whole story is gross, even if supposedly we're to believe it is accurate.
I mean, even going back to the Old Testament with the earth destructions.
Yeah.
He promised that he wouldn't send another flood. But in Revelations, during the end of the world, there's floods. So what is going on with that?
Well, I think that but even the flood,
I mean, it's a side point, aside from Jesus, but it's connected.
But so
that's when
is
Jesus is
God
supposed to come
evil,
back,
right? Because if you anyone who is said to supposedly be angry, right? Because he's angry that people aren't acting the way he wants, so he did a genocide flood and supposedly kills the whole earth, animals too, and of course babies. That the Christians think, Jesus cares about the little children. He literally, because couldn't he just think he is God? Why would he use a flood? Couldn't he just say, as in the happened supposed in the nonsense, also fake story of Egypt and Moses, where only the adult children die? Which also horrible. Why not the Pharaoh die? Why the fuck kill the children? You sick bastard.
Yeah. Or he'll promise not to send another flood, but in Revelations, he pretty much sends down a giant asteroid.
Then flaming mountain. I know, but I'm saying though, is God evil? See, religious and theists say the Bible God's pure, without sin or without evil thought. But go ahead and read this right here. What it says. Does that sound like he's not evil?
Isaiah 45:7. The Bible God said, I create darkness, I create evil. I do all these things. Equals an evil Bible God. Job 2:3. The Bible God said to Satan, you incited me against Job to ruin Job without any reason. Evil Bible God. Exodus 32:14. The Bible God repented of the evil which he thought to do unto his people. Evil Bible God. All this is evidence of the evil God, even repenting of evil himself. This helps show just how bad the Bible myth of God actually would be. Thank God he is not real. Of course, the Bible claims its God does not repent. Numbers 23:19 equals moralize as always.
Oh, sorry. I was setting up the next one.
The Bible itself contradicts this. P.S. Here is one more verse to push the point. The Bible God repented that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. Genesis 6:6.
Right, yeah. So God did repent.
I mean, even that, these bits and pieces of emotion you get. I mean, even going back to the book of Genesis, he makes it pretty obvious from the get-go that he's not, all these things that he's claimed to be, omniscient, omnipresent, his own words show that's not true.
Right? That's what I said.
He can't find Adam in the garden. He gets jealous if you worship or even look at other gods.
That's what I'm trying to say is, to me, using the Bible itself, its stories, I feel are more powerful to address Christians' belief in it than trying to say outside stuff came in. Outside stuff, I'm not saying outside stuff didn't come in, it did. I'm just saying it's much more persuasive to actually attack. Is God good? Like I say here. So God's punishment of David for doing rape. David does rape. Don't punish the rapist. Kill his children. Read that.
Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against God. Nathan answered David, God on his part has forgiven your sin. You shall not die. But since you have utterly spurned God by this deed, the child born to you must surely die. The child is said to die 7 days later.
Right. It's certainly not a good God or good story of a God that does that, right?
Not only that, there's another section in the Bible. I haven't read the Bible in a while, bits and pieces here and there.
Right.
But there's a section in there, in Proverbs, it says, don't be an adulterer, don't idolize another man's wife. But there's a section in there where God literally rewards this one guy for idolizing and adultering his wife. So is he just picking and choosing who he rewards?
Well, he does pick and choose. This right here verse shows it.
And that's the thing.
Read this, because this is I have a thing showing a little ladder for the men is easier and the women is almost impossible, because that's sort of how the Bible sets it up. Men and women are not, God does not love them equally or does not see them as equal.
The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if anyone makes a special vow to dedicate a person to the Lord by giving the equivalent value. Leviticus.
So who's saying this? This supposedly was God speaking himself, unless you're going to say the Bible lied and God didn't say this.
Leviticus 27:3. The value of a male ages of 20 and 60 years at 50 shekels of silver. Leviticus 27:4. The value of a female ages of 20 and 60 years at 30 shekels of silver. Leviticus 27:5. The value of a male ages of 5 and 20 years at 20 shekels of silver. And the value of a female ages of 5 and 20 years at 10 shekels of silver. Leviticus
Not
27.
equal, right?
I'll finish reading this, then I'll give my thoughts.
Go ahead.
Leviticus 27:6. The value of a male ages of 1 month and 5 years at 5 shekels of silver, and the value of a female ages of 1 month and 5 years at 3 shekels of silver. Leviticus 27:7. The value of a male ages of 60 years old or more at 15 shekels of silver, and the value of a female ages of at 10 shekels of silver. So it's always nice seeing that your loving God, who cares about all of humanity, all ages, and apparently all life, is giving advice on how to sell children and adults, like putting prices on them, like dirt low prices.
Yeah,
like,
true.
It just shows that
my point also is unequal.
That too.
It's
unequal.
not all people are worth 50 shekels, and all
No.
children or adults are worth 50 shekels, and all women are worth 50 shekels. Men are worth 50, women are worth 30, children, it's 10 and 5, and then elderly, it's 15. So elderlies don't matter.
So God's basically saying he values the adult men the most, and the children, like female children, the least. Like if you're a little girl, you're almost nothing to him.
Right. So I'm going back to my saying that song that Christians like saying, Jesus loves the little children. You don't find that in the Bible.
Yeah. He's giving you like a code on how to sell these people.
He's talking about their worth. But anyways, so let's go back to the thing. I'm just saying, going back to my point is, Jesus did not have anything to do with the founding of Christianity. I feel that is a fact. Survey says that is true.
Survey says that's an interesting way to put it. Survey.
You like a talk show? Survey says.
Survey. That's a good one. Okay.
Well, my point was, I'm saying survey. What I'm talking about is actually not like in the Family Feud or whatever. The survey is they do of people. I'm saying a survey of the writings of the Bible does not support that. It just doesn't.
No. Okay. This next part, the proponents of
mainstream
mysticism.
scholar consensus. It's right after that Jesus didn't found Christianity.
The mainstream scholarly consensus, developed in the 3 quests for the historical Jesus, holds that there was a historical Jesus of Nazareth who lived in the 1st century CE Roman Judea, but his baptism and crucifixion are the only facts of his life about which a broad consensus exists. Beyond that, mainstream scholars have no consensus about the historicity of other major aspects of the gospel stories, nor the extent to which they and the Pauline epistles may have replaced the historical Jesus with a supernatural Christ of faith. Proponents of mythicism, in contrast, argue that a historical Jesus never existed and that the gospels historicized a mythological character. This view can be traced back to the Age of Enlightenment, when history began to be critically analyzed. It was revived in the 1970s. Most mythicists employ a 3-fold argument. They question the reliability of the Pauline epistles and the Gospels to establish Jesus' historicity. They argue
pause for a second. About Paul, only like half of the books of what are considered the books of Paul, scholars agree are probably written by Paul. The other ones are not. So just so people even say they believe the Bible, you need to understand that Paul, once again, like it's a normal thing we already talked about in the religion, didn't write all the books of Paul.
They argue that information is lacking on Jesus in secular sources from the 1st and early 2nd centuries. And they argue that early Christianity had syncretistic and mythological origins as reflected in both the Pauline epistles and the Gospels, with Jesus being
so syncretism, what they're really trying to say is when an outside religion gets kind of blended. So when Christianity got influenced, say, by Zoroastrianism, or or Jews did, or Greek stuff, that's outside. If it doesn't mean like the Canaanite stuff that got put in there. That wouldn't have been synchronized, since the Israelis, or ancient ones or whatever, the Hebrews or Jews, whatever, they came out of the area of Canaan. Their language was Canaanite. They literally used the word El as God, which El was the high god of the Canaanite religion. In fact, it's Israel because it's about the god El. And El, used in the beginning parts of the Bible, is used 156 times all by itself. Because some people try to say, oh no, the Jewish peoples, they called their God Elohim, which means more like them than it means he or whatever. And them could be multiple deities, because El was considered to have a divine council. It is a version of the Bible that said that God, Yahweh, sits at the divine council of gods.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you can see like a link there between.
Right, but I'm saying that wouldn't be syncretism, because syncretism is an outside source coming in and then you blend it with yours. If it's an inside source, it's not syncretism. And I don't consider the area your literally religion comes from and uses that God name somehow as syncretism. You're like a sect of Canaanite religion. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Just so people understand. But other sources, like if it was Egyptians added in, or Assyrian, Babylonian, or whatever added in, or Greek added in, or Persian added in, or Indo-European, or whatever else, because Indo-European got it added in as well. It's not like it was only, the ones I already mentioned, but it's just that Indo-European probably had much less influence, or almost nothing. Well, maybe not almost nothing, but certainly not as compared to the other stuff. The other, religions are certainly way more prominent in the stuff that relates to the Jews and every religion, and which became Judaism or whatever, than Proto-Indo-European ideas, although some of them did blend their way in. In fact, the early Jews, whatever, in the temples, they used marijuana or cannabis and burned it for the goddess. I have a meme for that somewhere.
Did it start with Ash?
Ashtar, yeah. Ash, whatever. Yeah, that the Asher poles or whatever.
Talked about that. We had talked about that a little bit in one of our previous episodes, I think.
Right, the Asher poles, yeah. And then there's and there's actually they burned stuff to Asher, and they also burned I think it was frankincense to Yahweh. But the cannabis stuff literally comes from the steppe and would have been Proto-Indo-European related. Mm-hmm. So that would be a syncretism, where they've taken something outside, just so people understand what they're saying by syncretism. It's outside something being added in. So that's, what that means, as opposed to inside stuff. Like I said, the Canaanites really is where they kind of branch off of and even use the deity's name. There was the Canaanite deity, and they even they're against the god Baal, and yet there is the name Baal in some of the early writings also, just to me showing that once again their stuff isn't really that removed as I think they would like it to be. They would like it to be totally removed, has nothing to do with it, but actually that's actually not the case. It's not totally removed from the Canaanite I'm talking about, religious stuff. So, because some people try to act like that's somehow a syncretizing, but it's not. Just like here's the menorah, but the menorah actually relates to the tree of life, which the Asher pole also sort of related to the tree of life. So, when the tree of life is in other religious ideas outside of the, even Canaanites. So, because the Mesopotamians also had it, it's evolved. And what's interesting too is they take the Asher poles supposedly out of the temple, but then they stick in the menorahs, which are literally like an Asher pole. So they didn't actually do, what the supposed do. But anyways, going back to the stuff, go ahead and read, because you had read Christianity and syncretized.
Yep.
Mythological origins. So the next one, the non-historicity of
the non-historicity of Jesus. has never garnered significant support among scholars. Mythicism is rejected by virtually all mainstream scholars of antiquity and has been considered a fringe theory for more than 2 centuries, but it has attracted more attention in popular culture with the rise of the internet. American independent scholar Richard Carrier,
Who's an atheist,
born in 1969, reviewed Doherty's work on the origination of Jesus and eventually concluded that the evidence favored the core of Doherty's thesis. According to Carrier, following Couchoud and Doherty, Christianity started with the belief in a new deity called Jesus, a spiritual, mythical figure. According to Carrier, this new deity was fleshed out in the Gospels, which added a narrative framework and cynic-like teachings, and eventually came to be perceived as a historical biography. Carrier argues in his book on the historicity of Jesus why we might have reason for doubt that the Jesus figure was possibly originally known only through private revelations and hidden messages in Scripture, which were then crafted into a historical figure to communicate the claims of the Gospels allegorically. Those allegories were subsequently believed as fact during the struggle for control of the Christian churches of the first century. Citing the methodological failure of the criteria of authenticity and asserting a failure of the entire quest for criteria, Richard Carrier writes, "The entire field of Jesus studies has thus been left without any valid method." In modern scholarship, the Christ myth theory is considered a fringe theory and finds virtually no support from scholars, to the point of being addressed in footnotes or almost completely ignored due to the obvious weaknesses they espouse.
Right, so like I told you, I don't know that it's totally true, but I do think it's sort of a weak, I feel, thing when we can just say, okay, there's a human being, but it wasn't anything special. And that more aligns with what it says in their own Bible. So we don't have to. But I also am not like anti these people saying that thing could be a myth. Sure, it could.
Common criticisms against the Christ myth theory include general lack of expertise or relationship to academic institutions and current scholarship, reliance on arguments from silence, lack of evidence, dismissal or distortion of what sources actually state, questionable methodologies, and outdated or superficial comparisons with mythologies. Robert Van Voorst has written, contemporary New Testament scholars have typically viewed Christ myth arguments as so weak or bizarre that they relegate them to footnotes or often ignore them completely. The theory of Jesus' non-existence is now effectively dead as a scholarly question. Paul L. Mayer, a former professor of ancient history at Western Michigan University and current professor emeritus of its Department of History, has stated, anyone who uses the argument that Jesus never existed is simply flaunting his ignorance. In a 2015 poll conducted by the Church of England, 22% of British respondents indicated that they did not believe Jesus was a real person. A 2015 British survey reported 49% declared having no religion. A 2020 poll by YouGov stated that the number of British respondents who did not believe Jesus existed is just 15%. A 2020 British survey reported 50% declared having no religion.
Right. So to me, right there, the reason I added those two at the bottom is because, to show that 5 years right after they did the first one, less people believed Jesus was fake than before, even though the level of non-religion was close to the same, if not just a tiny bit more not religious. It's not a strong argument that persuades people. Like I said to you, even if mythicism is correct, it's not the great argument to argue about. We can show all kinds of the verses like we did that are horrid, that are in the Bible, that they have to somehow justify. In fact, I was debating this one Christian apologetics people. It's like a 3-hour video, and I argued like a school. There's like about 6 or 8 people, and one of them tried to tell me that the slavery was different. And I'm like, there's literally a verse that says if you need to, you can sell your daughter into slavery. And he goes, well, it depends on how poor you are. And I'm like, you're a scumbag. You're trying to justify this absolute horrid shit.
Whoa.
As if it's okay that, well, of course you can sell your daughter, if you need money. Listen to yourself. You're literally willing to put yourself into a garbage place just to justify this fake fucking book. So this right here is a Christian philosophy. Now, I don't agree that it has here Jesus is historical, but I do agree with their argument that association fallacy that just because other things are myths and there's similarity doesn't make the other thing automatically a myth.
Number 1, there were many dying and rising gods of the ancient world whose resurrections were similar to Jesus' resurrection. 2, the gospel authors were aware of these myths, which influenced the way they wrote the gospels. C, it is more likely Jesus' resurrection was also a myth.
Well, I do agree Jesus' resurrection was a myth.
Mhm.
Because there is no such thing, but not because other stories also have myths in them. And when it says Jesus historical, I'm regarding Jesus mythicism. That's what so I don't agree that they start like the Jesus resurrection is historical. No, it is not.
Yeah, so just because you have these two similarities between, Osiris and Jesus, it doesn't mean that there's a bunch of other similarities you should expect to find.
It doesn't mean that Jesus somehow has to be a myth because other stories have things in him and are myths to the people.
Oh, I'm just giving my thoughts, putting into my own words what it says in the bottom right.
Right. So anyways, like I said, I think that they're trying to go the other way further, which is not valid, that somehow Jesus starts off with the assumption that it has to be real. There was a real resurrection, and just because other people have resurrections and are fake, that Jesus has to also be fake. There's no evidence Jesus had a resurrection. If you mean that there's no evidence that Jesus is an actual human being, that's a different issue.
I do question and doubt much of the Jesus story, but agree that a delusional religious fanatic person people now call Jesus is possible and move on from there. Miracles and the supernatural are not real. Jesus as a person could have been historical, and yet the stories about him, especially the claimed miracles in the Bible, still may be myths. I am not saying I know Jesus mythicism is completely false. It is neither impossible nor a completely bad idea, because sure, people could have made it all up, but it is not, to me, a great argument to motivate atheism. Compared to debunking Jesus' credibility using the Bible, people do believe, and thus I don't use Jesus mythicism. AI overview. The perspective that Jesus of Nazareth was a historical person whose life was later embellished with mythological miracle stories is a mainstream position held by many secular historians, agnostic scholars, and some liberal theologians. While the existence of a historical Jesus is widely accepted, the miraculous narratives in the Bible are often viewed by these scholars as legends or faith-based narratives rather than empirical history. From the article, Jesus Mythicism and Jesus Mythicism 8, Jesus, History, and Miracles. There is a common line of argument among the more naive believers in Jesus mythicism that goes, the stories of Jesus are full of miracles and other non-historical elements. So if any of them are not historical, why not all of them? This all or nothing thinking is based on the idea that if any part of these accounts can be concluded to be not historical, this means the rest of them are as well. It's all made up, but even in its more developed form, this kind of argument ignores the fact that miracles and what we consider the supernatural were commonly believed during the 1st century CE, and we find such elements in many accounts of historical figures as well. So miracle stories are not a solid indicator of a historicity. It is actually an interesting exercise to take, say, the Gospel of Mark and look at what is left if you ignore all the miracles and supernatural elements. Contrary to the claim above, there's actually quite a bit left, and it makes a reasonably coherent story. After all, much of the narrative in the Gospels consists of Jesus going somewhere, answering questions, telling parables, preaching. Remove the miracles and the resurrection accounts from Mark, and we are left with the story of a preacher who teaches about the coming apocalyptic return, God's power, and the renewal of the earth that will follow.
Right. And that's a history for atheists. And so that's when to me, going through the stuff like that the one video we did where he talks about Jesus stuff, his 300,000 followers, he promotes that idea, as well as the well-known atheist Rising Gods, famous atheist Richard Carrier. And there's also a video by Godless Engineer, who's an atheist, and has 70,000 subscribers, as a video how rising and dying gods were synchronized with Judaism with Richard Carrier. So like I said, I don't feel like I'm the enemy of those people, because I'm not saying, totally against their concept. I think it's weak and not very effective. It may be fun for atheists to go, ha, 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 it's all made up, but if you're really trying to get people to change from the Jesus faith, I don't think it's a very, very effective argument. I've done done a lot of street activism. Did it for 15 years, where I went all the time, colleges and stuff, and talked to people. And that kind of stuff makes people shut down immediately. What I used to tell them is, tell me what is that you like the most. Like, a lot of times people come, they're real angry or whatever. You're wrong, you atheists, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, tell me what do you like the most about your faith? What do you like the most about Jesus? What do you like the most about your church or whatever? The reason I'm saying this, they don't go, oh, well, that he, died and suffered and was tortured, that he wants to send people to hell. That's not what they love the most about it. They love the good things, which is because we all, in a sense, like good things and would like things to be good. So to me, I focus on, then like I was saying, then address, well, the Bible doesn't really support these good things. It doesn't see people as equal. It doesn't value children of all races, and it says you should put other people of different religions to death. It says you should not, respect all kinds of stuff. So to me, stone your children to death if they disobey you. Literally horrid shit that. So I feel, like I said to you before, my thing is to get people to actually desire to rethink stuff and change. And I feel that it's not an, completely invalid thing to question the Christology of Jesus. Of course it is. But is it going to be very effective? And then also, I move on past some of the other atheists that feel like they're dedicated to try to make people become atheists. I feel like I need to do my stuff is that I want to educate people about why religion happened, where it came from, how it relates to all their stuff. Not just Christian, not just Muslim, not just, Hindu, but all world religions, Native American, everything. The whole, that's because to me, I feel like it's all, a lot of atheists will say, well, it's all made up. Do they know that? Do they really even know some of the religions to be able to assess them in that way? You mean the ones you feel are made up? And certainly magical stories are made up, but it's a lot better when you can address these different things. Now, I know that certainly, like, the fact that I address this other stuff is not as favored, because a lot of people in the atheist community really want you to focus on just Jesus and Christian all the time. I don't do that. And then the other thing is, certainly I make both some leftists mad and some native peoples mad, because they feel like I'm, attacking their religions, which other people don't really do. And the leftists feel sometimes that because I'm an atheist and an anti-theist and anti-religionist, that I am being colonial to native religions and trying to, just like the people a long time ago say their things aren't true, which is a fallacy, because I say all religion is the same and it's all untrue. I don't say Christianity is real, which is what the colonial people did, right? Yeah. Christianity's true, native religions are false.
Even like the atheist debates, I've watched a bunch of those, and I've noticed that too. They pretty much always focus on Jesus or Christianity. They don't focus on all the other ones. And even with what I specialize in, Native American prehistory and northern hunter-gatherers, we're seeing a lot of that now with people talking about their traditional beliefs. Like if you start criticizing them or saying they shouldn't affect archaeology, you'll get arguments like that, like, oh, you're being a colonizer, you're doing other things like that.
Oh yeah, but I even had an archaeology.
And it actually affects the quality of research academics.
I totally agree. In fact, you and me on one of our videos on the old copper culture says two white guys talking about native stuff. Like, it's somehow, well, then it immediately means we have nothing to say, or that we're immediately just colonizers because we're talking about, or only natives can talk about native stuff. Really, to me, it's just ridiculous. If we're educated on it, we're educated, and if we're not, we're not. Just like that person in the first video was an Assyriologist for Syria, right, which is Mesopotamia, Iraq, whatever. He's a white guy. Should we not agree that he or any white people have anything to do with the Middle East? How about Africa? I know stuff about Africa. Can I not talk about African religions ever because I'm not from Africa? I think it's the way in what we do. You and me, I don't put down, call them primitive and all this. And if you did that, that is colonial, no matter to me what you're doing, whether you're an atheist or a believer.
Well, yeah.
And I've also heard native people who are now Christians call the old ideas done by Native Americans as primitive. So they're using colonizer language, even though they themselves are native.
Yeah.
And now have chosen Christianity, or probably were raised in it, so they don't, like everybody else. You're born into the religion. It becomes your identity.
Or like I was going to say, to add another example to that, Like, what if you had a life-threatening illness and you had different doctors that were knowledgeable, but you refused like the African American doctor, even though he's just as knowledgeable as the rest of them?
Absolutely.
Like, why would you not let him contribute if he can? He's just as knowledgeable. Are you just going to exclude him because of the color of his skin?
I totally agree. Yeah. I've had my last doctor when I was in Florida was I think Vietnamese. The one before that was Indian, East Indian, and the one before that was a white guy, and then before that was a black guy. And I've had females. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter. If you're knowledgeable, you're knowledgeable. That's what matters to me. Are you knowledgeable? And so I feel like, just like I've heard before, like they could say, well, I'm 56 and you're not, so I must have more knowledge than you because I'm older. Literal fallacies. I could be 100 and you could be 10, and somehow you could know a fact I don't know. I mean, those two things.
It reminds me of this kid. This was years ago. He's an adult now, but he made news, I think, when he was 14, because he was like this math whiz. Like he was on the fast track to universities, like high level math, calculus, and everything. He was doing stuff none of his peers could. Like even like adults his age, he could solve math problems in his head just like that. And so it shows like you can be young, you can be old, you can have different life experiences, come from different places, but like what I want to see from people is like show me that you understand these concepts, like that you're knowledgeable, that you have like quality to offer.
That's a philosophy or a logical, in a sense, way to approach it. So to me, like a lot of times, what I talk about when I talk about things being the same, or even the rising and dying gods, what that really is a mytheme they're trying to say. And so go ahead and read this 3 paragraphs and then we'll be done.
In structuralism influenced studies of mythology, a mytheme is a fundamental generic unit of narrative structure, typically involving a relationship between a character, an event, and a theme, from which myths are thought to be constructed. A minimal unit that is always found, shared with other related mythemes, and reassembled in various ways, bundled, or linked in more complicated relationships. For example, the myths of Greek Adonis and Egyptian Osiris share several elements, leading some scholars to conclude that they share a source, i.e., images passed down in centuries or from one to another, being ascribed new interpretations of the action depicted, as well as new names in various readings of icons. Claude Lévi-Strauss, 1908-2009, who gave the term wide circulation, wrote, "If one wants to establish a parallel between structural linguistics and the structural analysis of myths, the correspondence is established, not between mytheme and word, but between mytheme and phoneme." The structuralist analyzer of folk tales, Vladimir Prop, treated the individual tale as the unit of analysis. The unitary mytheme, by contrast, is the equivalent in myth of the phonemes, morphemes, and sememes, into which structural linguistics divides a language, the smallest possible units of sound, structure, and meaning, respectively, within a language system. In the 1950s, Claude Lévi-Strauss first adapted this technique of language analysis to analytical myth criticism. In his work on the myth systems of primitive tribes, working from the analogy
Pause for a second. Do you see where he says primitive tribes?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, now that's colonial thinking right there.
Mm-hmm. Working from the analogy of language structure, he adopted the French term mytheme, with the assertion that the system of meaning within mythic utterances parallels closely that of a language system. Roman Jacobson varies this idea, treating mythemes as concepts or phonemes which have no significance in themselves, but whose significance might be shown by sociological analysis. Philosophers such as Daniel Dennett have also used the term mytheme. Lev Manovich uses the terms semi and mytheme in his book, The Language of New Media, to describe the aspects of culture with which computer images enter into dialogue.
Right. And Daniel Dennett is also an atheist, not just a philosopher. And so the picture I have here, this is on reincarnation, rebirth, and it's a blog, but we're not going to go to it. But on indigenous religions from Siberia, the Americas, and Aboriginal Australian, Celtic Druids, as well as Indian religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, all have elements of reincarnation. Like you said, one of my shorter ones, because to me this is not a direct thing that I would have probably focused on, because I like broader mythemes that relate to more things. But I felt it was important because you didn't, get to do all other 15 videos I already did in this video series. This is number 16, so it was way down on the list. It'd get honorable mention, but yeah, not what I consider the first importance that everyone needs to learn.
No, but even for me being a latecomer into your discussions about mythologies, especially since Corey's done a lot of this with you, like just this one episode for me was incredibly informative.
Good.
Like looking earlier, not just with the contradictions in the Bible, like that was informative to me because I'd seen some examples I didn't know about because it's been so long since I've actually picked up the Bible and read it cover to cover. I haven't done that since I was a kid going to Baptist, like after school Baptist programs.
Right. Well, actually, a lot of Christians or people that follow the Bible or Jesus don't actually read the whole book, or it's so long that they don't remember, or they just accept whatever their pastor does, and that's that's like saying, I believe everything Fox News tells me.
Okay, buddy.
Right? And so if that was I believe everything Trump says, because Trump recently said something was unconstitutional. No, Trump. What you were doing was unconstitutional. The Constitution is a document that actually says things, and you don't even know what it says. You just like that word because it sounds like it goes against So what I mean by that is some people get interpretation of the Bible like Jesus loves little children. When where exactly does it say?
Are you sure?
Have you read the Bible?
Yeah.
He loves everyone equally. Because I remember the song. I don't know if I remember it, but maybe you don't. I don't know. But Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red, blue, yellow, black, and white. They're all perfect in his sight. Are they? Really?
Doesn't seem like it. No, not at all.
And there certainly is, like I said, there's no verse that says where Jesus says that. They just interpret, oh, well, of course it's true. Well, yeah, because you want it to be, or you want us to interpret it that way.
Or you're like taking this this almost 2,000-year-old story, and you're filtering it through modern politics or like your own belief system or something.
Or they're taking Paul's word when Paul says this is for everybody. Okay, well, Paul said that, not Jesus. So do you say Paul says that Jesus loves everyone? That would be more accurate than say Jesus said it.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't. No.
And there's a difference between Paul saying something and Jesus saying something. Yeah,
right.
Like you're not supposed to be following Paul's word; you're supposed to be following Jesus's word. So,
right. Which also, speaking of that, I also have a thing that shows that people trust all the word of Paul. I feel really way too much because there's several things that Paul and Jesus don't line up. Like how Paul reacts towards how women should be is sounds more Roman. It doesn't even sound like anything to do with Jesus. Because Jesus was said that women could be educated and could listen and should listen to say Bible, stuff or whatever. Where Paul's like, women should be silent and shouldn't ask questions and shouldn't teach men and shouldn't, Yeah. Jesus didn't say any of that. No. So that's why, like right here, right? Paulism versus Jesus.
You have a little piece of artwork for everything, don't you? Paulism versus Jesus. Paul writes several declarations and laws that state his views are from him and not God. Judge for yourselves what I say. 1 Corinthians 10:15. Even as I try to please everybody in every way. 1 Corinthians 10:33. To the rest I say, I, not the Lord. 1 Corinthians 7:12. I have no command from the Lord, but I give a judgment. 1 Corinthians 7:25. In my judgment. 1 Corinthians 7:40. Mark my words. I, Paul, tell you that if you let yourselves be. Galatians 5:2. Again, I declare to every man who. Galatians 5:3. I want men everywhere too. 1 Timothy 2:8. I also want women too. 1 Timothy 2:9. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to. 1 Timothy 2:12. Now I want you to realize 1 Corinthians 11:3.
Right.
Well, yeah, he's referring to himself.
Right. So, and then what happens though is people just assume that, well, Paul is God's emissary, like the Pope. So if Paul said it, then people just forget, oh yeah, but Jesus didn't actually say that. Or even Paul, it doesn't say, yeah, well, Jesus said this. He's like, well, my opinion. So to me, it's, once again, the Bible itself is a good way to critique the Bible.
Yeah.
Because it professes things that literally don't make sense.
Yeah. And even this one image here, it touches on that whole debate of whether people should worship the saints or the apostles or not. Because there's
Right.
people that do. Like, they'll walk up to their statues and kneel and pray to them as if they're talking to Jesus or something.
They absolutely do that. It is, yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah.
So a lot of times religious people come up and attack it and tell me, you have no right to question God. But is that biblical? And I always say to people, do as your God commands.
What's your God command?
Right? What does the God command them to do?
Okay, 1 Peter 3:15.
It's
Always
First
be
Peter, by the way. They
Oh,
don't-
yeah. 1 Peter 3:15. My bad. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have in the Bible, God / Jesus. But do this with gentleness and respect.
Wow, MAGA needs to really read that verse, I think.
But do this with gentleness and respect.
You like
should be
that, huh?
underlined. Yeah.
Because that's confusing, right? I'm interpreting that wrong.
Faith and hope are related concepts as seen in Hebrews 11:1. Faith is assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
So it can't be evidence, right? Because it's a conviction of things not seen. So yeah, because they always go, oh, well, faith and hope is different. I'm like, well, are you sure that's biblical?
But even that first section, 1 Peter 3:15, it seems like a lot of Christians need to review that. But do this with gentleness and respect.
How about following the Bible? I mean, is
Yeah.
it too much to ask, right? Really? Or how about this when they go, okay, well, I pray for you. And I always think of this verse right here. Pray for me. Is that biblical? What does
Matthew
it say?
6, Matthew 6, 5-7. When you pray, go into your room, close the door. Don't be like hypocrites, praying on the street corners to be seen and heard by others.
Oh, they don't follow that one.
Nope, not at all.
No,
And don't
they don't
keep
even
on
try to
babbling.
follow that one.
No, it doesn't seem like it. And don't keep on babbling like pagans, like many words matter. And
like that,
reminder,
Where it's like chastising you.
yeah.
And then they do
And
the opposite. Weird, right?
And reminder from those who don't want to hear about your prayers.
Right, because we don't. I at least, okay, put it this way. I don't. I don't want to hear about your fantasies. Just do as your Bible says and go and pray in private. Whenever they say, well, there's freedom in Jesus, I always think of this.
Are you free? Any path that leads to me as a slave is never going to be something I ever willingly choose. I am free. You are free, are you not? Anyone who challenges my freedom deserves my wrath, not my love. Right? Enslaved if I don't have a master, whose slave will I be? I want everyone free, don't you? Or are you in support of the master and welcome being a slave? To the person questioning, I just advise you to read more and research. I hope you will be guided to the right path. I am a stranger in a strange land, called humanity because I actually don't welcome being a slave. How about you? Are you a free man or a slave? God talk has always just been the master talking out of your mouth. How disgusting the idea that a God would want a slave rather than my freedom. Yeah,
Right?
that's a good point.
Why would I even welcome the concept of your God? And people always go, why can't, even recently some archaeologist said to me, well, Damien, people sometimes, religion's the only thing that helps them get up in the morning. And I always think, you mean they feel they need religion to get up in the morning. They don't actually need it. And then also, when you start thinking your out atheism is not needed, just remember the millions of children indoctrinated who need our help with the truth.
Yeah. And the indoctrination of children, that's a big thing for me because it reminds me of cosmic skeptics, like ascent out of believing in everything in the Bible to becoming a well-known atheist who presents people arguments, tells them what fallacies are, and he has a video talking about the trauma that the hell concept had on him as a child, like almost to the point where it gave him PTSD. Like even to this day,
it's
like
terrifying.
there's like this nugget. Like even though he's an atheist and he's read a lot, there's this nugget. Like what if it's true?
Yeah,
like he's
that's
had
sad.
a hard
It's
time.
not
getting over
true.
that.
But we're taught that God loves torture. He tortured Jesus, right, just so he could forgive the world. He didn't have to do that. But torture and threat of torture, or even in an afterlife threat of hell torture, has been a favorite of Christian God followers since the Inquisition in 1252. Sinner and unbeliever, the act of sinning is a religious mindset that can be thought of as a transgression against a divine law or belief's supernatural will and its moral persuasion. But all of this to me is just a bunch of fantasy. It's not real. It's just superstitious thinking. Go ahead and read that.
The superstitious mind is a mind bent on the engagement of folly in thinking, avoiding clear sight, only seeing through the lens of delusion and misrepresentation. Such a mind is bent on wishful thinking over truth and finding this desired quality of nonsense everywhere. They look only to what they feel offers some confirmation. However, why they see magic everywhere is because they only see what they want to see. It's an inverted way of seeking, where one only confirms what excites them and fits to what they enjoy believing. Therefore, the superstitious mind is out looking for confirmation of its fears or its need for mystical wonderment. Thus, such a mind is arbitrarily making magic out of the yet unknown and creatively, as well as unwarrantedly making superstitious the natural wonderment of the known in order to allow it to wrongly be seen as containing magic. Yeah, it's like the confirmation bias taken to the extreme.
Right? And then that's also addressing reason blindness called faith.
Faith is the folly and reason blindness of even otherwise great thinkers. In other regards, that is, faith is offering feelings when the question was on facts. All this and more are why I oppose faith so much as a tool for anything but fantasies. But hey, that's just me. Some people seem to thrive on unreason called faith, as some people don't seem to require any thinking at all. Like telling me no one can judge God because God is God. Okay. As if that divine fallacy explains anything, but you stopped looking. Others drunk on faith don't seem to require reason nor evidence to acquire or keep unjustified beliefs, not much different from how unwilling some seem to let go of disproved beliefs in general. Instead, thinkers so faith-drunk just love to use faith whenever thinking seems too hard or the potential answer, if followed through, using anything other than faith would lose its value. So, the faith-drunk happily brings faith to the rescue. To employ faith, please close the eyes of your mind and believe on faith feelings. Just thinking about it makes me dissatisfied, to say the least.
Right.
Yeah, thinking about those people, it makes me disappointed.
Well, and you can see
the way they view the world, or like as you're showing here, the way they're choosing not to view the world. Like
they're not viewing the world.
Yeah,
because there's a big difference between religion and science.
Oh yeah, religion or science, it's not even a choice. Science, they replace old ideas for new. I work hard, I investigate. Religion, they suppress new ideas for old. I work hard, I pray. Yeah, right. So yeah, which are you gonna choose? You're gonna choose cultural stagnation. Yeah, you're gonna choose cultural stagnation for thousands of years because like every new discovery is suppressed and outlawed.
Right, or are you gonna start thinking and realizing the errors and stuff? Like I said, even if you didn't respect the rising and dying gods or mythology that's in the Bible, using the Bible itself, we've already shows it to be absolutely not credible and certainly not a good book, and not the words of Jesus and ideas are not good.
Truth navigation. No, I was just thinking like, hey, did you know you can use the Bible to debunk the Bible?
Right? That's my method. Use the Bible to debunk the Bible, to make people doubt.
Truth navigation and the fallacy of fideism, faithism.
Fideism means the same thing.
Okay, yeah.
The deism means faith.
Different word for it.
Well, you can go look it up. That's a philosophy. It's a real term. It's been around for 150 years or something like that. 100 years.
Fideism, also known as faithism, is theistic reality confusion. It's a monster of the mind that is blind to evidence or deaf and unresponsive to reason. Whereas a rationalist mind rejects such mental phantoms, such as the use of the F word, faith, as anything but feelings. We use feelings and emotion in every thought that enters or leaves our minds. We never stop emoting, but that is not the same as trying to actively claim to use feelings and emotions as if they are facts and evidence, i.e. faith, an expression of fideism, faith, also known as faithism. Fideism, epistemological theory, which maintains that faith is independent of reason, or that reason and faith are hostile to each other and faith is superior to both evidence and reason. Both faith, you're suspending your reason.
Right?
Yeah.
How can that possibly be reason? Well, it's not.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying to you at the beginning. There's a type of thinking that says, oh, well, faith, is superior to reason. So that says we don't have to reason. And I just feel like it's a bunch of denial of reality. And denial is an addiction. Left unchecked, it's harmful. More of my art.
Yeah. Denial is an addiction. Boy, the problem with that, it's like a bunch of little sheep.
It is.
Like walking to the edge of a giant canyon. They don't even know that they're heading for their doom.
Exactly. Faith is a champion of unsupported bad beliefs.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Faith is the champion of unsupported bad beliefs. Yeah. You really hit the nail on the head with this one. Yeah.
Right.
I like how she's like, is she pressed up against like glass or something, or is she like dancing?
Yeah,
she's like a cheerleader.
Glass. Yeah, like I plead to your reason. I'm not trying to force unbelief, but rather trying to ignite the spark of intellectual honesty all reasonably minded thinkers possess if they allow it to exist. Because to do that is to hijack a system of reason that can be persuaded to see a need to find or see actual truths, and from such a real truth-seeking, free of the limits of the past beliefs, it is to move from mental servitude to self-mastery and the possibility of genuine truths. So I know you do want reasoned belief acquisitions, will universally demonstrate good belief maintenance, and always honest support through belief relinquishment of any beliefs found lacking, because of course you believe in good belief etiquette, right?
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, so it's been good talking to you as always.
Oh yeah.
And hope that you got to learn a little bit and enjoy.
Well, yeah, you got me thinking.
Good.
Well, yeah, because this is a lot of stuff I'm unfamiliar with, so you've got me thinking during this one.
Right on.
Yeah.
Then the next one we're going to do is going to be about the dugouts and the canoes and all that, and the kelp highway hypothesis, blog that we did together. And then we'll go back and do another mythology one.
Okay.
And then, like I said, go back and forth every other week and do a different archaeology sort of, and then go, mythology.
Yeah, and that would work well for me. That way we can dip into what I'm familiar with,
right?
And what you're familiar with. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And also get you more familiar with all this stuff, because once you start to see, to me, that the archaeology stuff makes more sense when you understand the myths of why they were doing it.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, yeah, because it helps put everything in context.
In context, exactly.
Especially if you know what they believed. Yeah.
Right, which is why I, unlike a lot of the atheists, really care about world beliefs all over, whether it's Australia or New Papua New Guinea and whatever. I care about different, stuff, because I want to understand the whole world, not just why Christianity is not true.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Not true.
There's
Move
so many
on.
other things to research besides the Bible.
Right. Well, especially to me also, everyone's already, especially in the atheist movement, is goal set on that. So, okay, you've already done it. I don't need to do it, even if I felt it was necessary. There's already 1,000, other people doing that very topic. I don't feel enough people are doing what you and me are doing and finding out about all the other religions.
Oh, yeah.
Which I also don't want left to people that are just pagans or Christians, or going against it, or even atheists, like that one first video we showed. He focuses on some other religious stuff, but often geared really more towards teaching against Christianity beliefs, not just teaching the mythology in a sense. Which is what I generally try to do, is focus more on just the general, the whole stuff. As like we're teaching mythology as a person who doesn't believe it. I've had someone the other day try to tell me, how can they trust my ideas? because I'm an atheist saying this. And I was thinking, you would think that my ideas are more trustable, because why would I favor one religion over the other?
Exactly.
I'm not going to think one sound worse or better. Like, what do I care? It's all horseshit to me.
Oh God.
But also the other thing too is I do want to give an honest, appraisal of stuff. I mean, some people may feel it's not fair, like I'm not being fair to Jesus where I say different stuff, because they're unequally protecting it. If I said Zeus did this or that, they wouldn't give a shit. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So it's not me, but I understand. There's the other thing about me. Even if someone tells me, sometimes people tell me to fuck off or whatever.
Mhm.
I try to see it in the vein of, these are people that are protecting their belief. That doesn't mean I just allow it. Sometimes I block people. But what I don't usually do is, you'll almost never see me say fuck you back or attack them personally. Even if I've done critiques of people, in philosophy, done critiques of people in archaeology and mythology and whatever. Sometimes those people get mad. I've had one guy that was a scientist. He fucking got so pissed that I was saying, I can't remember now exactly off the top of my head, because it was like 5 years ago. But I mean, he got so pissed, and he started using all kinds of fallacies, and I just kept saying, this is a fallacy. It's like, you don't even have a freaking master's, and you're talking, I have a doctorate and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and that doesn't mean fuck all when we're talking about other things.
Yeah. I mean, especially nowadays, like with the internet, so much of this stuff is free.
But if you
Like
get what I'm trying to say,
yeah.
But in philosophy, because this also I understand. Not everybody understands philosophy. Not everybody has the same standards as I do of how to try to be. I try to be that. I don't want to unjustifiably attack people, but I also don't want to be the attacker. Even if someone unjustifiably attacks me, I don't allow them to just abuse me, but I don't do abuse back. I'm a better person than to be like that, or try to be. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I once in a while I get pissed off. Depends on the day or whatever.
I get the same way. There's something.
I'm human. I'm just making it. I'm just trying to, because I also don't like when people act like they're somehow better than people. I'm not better than people. I'm not better than believers. I'm not somehow because I'm smarter. There's people that are as smart as me or smarter. It could be believers or not. I'm saying your belief is wrong.
Yeah.
Believing in supernatural without evidence is not warranted. I don't care if you have 5 doctorates. And I've also got attacked by people that were philosophers. I was kicked out of a philosophy group because I told him the hammer of truth, which is my way of attacking ideas. Because some people do it, and I don't know if you know, but in atheists, there's a thing called street epistemology, where they basically try to say, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that, in a sense? But I used to really, I read books and stuff because of college and got into axiology, which my wife does naturally. And then I had a philosopher guy that I would argue with all the time. He was real big on epistemology, and my wife would say different things. And I realized, wait a minute, she's kind of doing like 3 things, really. She's addressing, because she'd always come back to the beginning. What are you talking about? Because I would already run with the ideas and attack its value, which is axiology.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy would say, well, how do you know something? Which my thing is already assuming you know it, or assuming what you said, and then just saying how it's not good, like judging its quality in a sense. Like if you say, well, I know something because, the bird outside chirped, and so God's real. You're like, what? Well, because I've had people when I debated on the street that told me, well, God is real. I know because a babies smile. And I said, so when a baby frowns, is that the devil? I mean, just their thinking is not, I'm using axiology to judge what you're saying. But my wife, I realize, would say that I'm assuming too much. I haven't, because instead of saying, what do you mean by smile? What do you mean by children? You mean all children or just one child?
Yeah.
I mean, but in a sense, I'm saying like, so I started realizing what she is doing, because she's like a natural philosopher. She's a logician. I'm more a rationalist. She's a logician, which, just so you understand my type of thinking, it goes feelings, thinking, reason, logic, math, science. Okay, type of thinkers. Because you can be anywhere on this, and so science is a higher thinker, not on every single thing, but in general, they think in a way that could be higher than someone who's just like me, a rationalist. I have to like break things down like a Rubik's Cube or whatever, or something, and figure it out. My wife sees bigger concepts than I do, even though I'm kind of a big picture thinker. She sees ideas sometimes, but anyways. So she's a natural philosopher, and really a lot of my stuff is like a mirroring and adaptation of what she does naturally, but then turns it into philosophy. So I call it the hammer of truth, which is ontology. What are you talking about? And then epistemology. How do you know that? And then axiology, that you value, judge what is being offered. And you do that all the time. And how it's useful is that you don't just do it every time someone talks. In other words, you don't always move past ontology. If someone offers something new that's unknown, you have to go back to ontology. You can't just start epistemology like a lot of atheists do to me and to my wife's way of doing it. So in other words, to put it, help people understand. So someone will say, well, God is the creator. And I would say, what do you mean by God? You mean black holes create the world? Because they were certainly almost at the beginning of the star system. Or it could have even been a black hole that caused the Big Bang. And they're like, no, it's a supernatural. Well, okay, wait a minute. See, now it's another ontology. What do you mean by supernatural? Well, supernatural is outside of nature. Whoa. What do you mean by outside of nature? So you got to ask the ontology question. So it's not epistemology. Some people think I'm doing, because I'm asking questions, that I'm doing epistemology. No, I am distinctly going back to the ontology. What are you talking about? I'm making them define it. This is important for two reasons. One, so I can understand and then attack it better. And two, I force them to establish what it is, so they can't change it later. Because if you ever debate people that are not like in writing, they love to say, oh, I didn't say that, right? Or I didn't mean that, or whatever. But if you say, but you said that supernatural, right? And you said supernatural was not natural, right? You said that. And it's a much more effective way to get people to think and to stop bullshit fast.
Yeah, that sounds like the Socratic method. Like, you just keep asking questions to get to the root of what you're talking about.
Well, but it moves on. So that's what I'm trying to say is it's more than the Socratic method, because the Socratic method is more complex. You can't just find an easy thing. My thing is with my wife's, ideas, to turn into philosophy, is only three things. Ontology, what are you talking about? Then once you can accept a structure of what they said, then you ask them how they know what they're talking about. Because like say we accepted a smile and what a God is, right? When she says a smile means God. Then you ask, well, how do you know that? How do you know that a smile equals God and God equals supernatural agent outside of the world? How do you know that? And then, like I said, that's where like the street epistemology thinks, aha, I made him question, but doesn't go anywhere, because the goal for the street epistemology is to make you doubt. I'm not a skeptic. My wife is not a skeptic. She's a logic. You need to follow logical jumps or it's not logical. Me, it has to make reason to make it qualified to be worth something. So, and we're not skeptics. So it's not good enough for me for you to doubt. Leaving you with just doubting, not good enough. I need to then value judge what you've just offered. Because if I say how you know that, and you say the Bible, and I say, well, the Bible is not a credible source. Or the Bible, we can show, right, which we have in this show, has multiple errors. And thus cannot be seen as 100% accurate because it literally can't be. And then just like I say, we judge its goodness, which is a value judge, which is axiology, not epistemology, which is asking questions. I'm now judging. I've taken what you've said, and now I'm like a court. I'm making a judgment. That's not a good God. A good God does not say, I'm only here for the Jews, and I will not heal a sick child, when I can also show magic of making water to wine or walking magically across the water to a boat where people are fishing, or tell people to cast their net on one side and they get fish. I can do magic whenever I feel like it, but I won't heal a child. Not a good God. Not a good person. Yeah. That's a axiological judgment of what I'm offered. So it's more powerful. It's easier to use than Socratic. It's more powerful than a Socratic, I feel, or than the street epistemology, because their goal is only to get you to doubt. My goal is to get you to truly think. Truly thinking, it just does not make sense. It cannot be good. You cannot say that I both have a perfect God who destroyed the entire planet in a genocide and also loves everyone and also forgives everyone. And also to forgive, literally, supposedly tortured Jesus. So then he felt satisfied. That's enough torture. I feel good now. But what kind of a sick fuck is that?
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm saying I take what you've offered now, and then we value judge it, because then we're morally critiquing it. In fact, I'm considered an axiological atheist because I do this, which is considered, in a sense, using the moral argument against religion and gods. Just like when I say religion, I'm anti-religious because religion is, I'm judging it, pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality. Those are not questions, not me Socratically questioning. Those are me axiologically looking at what it is and then value judging. This is not trustable, not worth it, not holy, not removed from blemishes or removed from inaccuracies. This is not worth it. So like I said, it's a different way of attacking, and it always is the same. If you were to bring up another thing, I would have to go back to ontology. What are you talking about? And then once I know what you're talking about and we established it, then I would have to know, how do you know this? Then I would have to say, is it valuable? So then we value judge together, and I show a reasonable why it cannot be valuable, which isn't it. And so also, because of that, I'm considered because of an axiologist, I'm considered both one of the worst kind of atheists for a Christian, whatever, because I morally judge. Because in other words, a lot of atheists will say, even Matt Tilley, well, I don't know, maybe Jesus could be real. If it could be shown to be real, I'd worship it. My thing is, there's no reason to say Jesus is real. I know all the gods are false. If somehow there was a real person named Jesus, it would mean that I would have to live in servitude. I do not accept servitude. That is not a moral state for anyone to even ask of me. That being would be immoral. I'm value judging that being way more than, you see what I'm saying, than just,
yeah.
I don't know, and maybe, and no. There's no maybe. And if it could be shown, then I will show that what it is not worthy of my anything. To me, any being that demands you worship it and is not worth it, the worship. Not worth the respect. So respect is fear? I thought fear and respect are different.
Yeah.
But my wife always says that the reason that most people don't think of ontology, including me sometimes, is because we're born knowing. We have this attitude that as soon as I say like God, you already know what I'm talking about, but you may not. In fact, she's helped me understand. That's why I started doing better out in the street, because people would say, I believe in God, and I assume they mean Jesus or some specific thing. And they're like, well, I just mean like a supernatural power, or say something else. And I'm like, oh, or there could be something, which is an actual religion in some parts of the world, especially Iceland, called somethingism, where it's it's like spiritual, non-religious, not really anything, sort of maybe some spiritual force.
Yeah, there's probably something.
Right?
Yeah.
You get it. Somethingism. But I'm just saying is, so if I wouldn't ask, I would have wrongly assumed, which sometimes I've seen people do too when they debate, they wrongly assume what the other person believes. And then their attacks are not as effective because they're assuming. Because, like, in other words, if you said God and I just said how you know that without understanding what you mean by God, which is a lot of epistemology or atheists kind of do or can do, they haven't addressed what kind. Because what if you believe in an Ojibwe God or something?
Yeah.
Or the corn deity, right? Or you believe in a goddess and they keep saying God and you believe in a goddess. And so you say, well, the Bible is false. And you're like, okay. And I believe in the corn deity. What are you talking about?
Yeah, or like Mishapesh Guardian. Yeah.
And so to me, just saying how you know that, and then it is addressing the wrong thing, because you really need to know what they're talking about first. That's what I said. That's what my wife really helped me understand, that me and that philosopher were both had parts that were right, but we were both wrong because we were starting with already knowing. So, but as you've seen too, could you imagine if we applied that same thinking of already knowing to, say, archaeology or understanding prehistory? Starting with I already know is not a good way to start.
No.
Right?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. No,
right?
You're gonna be missing a lot if you head into like every research project with that idea in mind.
Right? Or like the old copper culture we've talked about before. Imagine all those tools, assuming that you already knew what all of them were, even though you don't, or assuming when they said stone tools that you assume that they were just all, spear points because you never asked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not realizing there was spuds and ads and, and all kinds of, alls and whatever. And you didn't ask.
No.
And I'm getting what I'm trying to say. So you can see that way doesn't work. My wife's way works literally not just for attacking religion, but for learning and for even teaching, because you need to teach in the hammer of truth. In other words, you need to give what you're talking about, how you know that, and why it's valuable. Because when you do that, then people start really understanding.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's just a way of challenging, like you said, Socratic method. It's a way of teaching. You should teach. What are you talking about? How you know it, and why what it is valuable. And then when you challenge people, you should challenge what are they talking about? How do they know that? And why is it valuable?
Yeah, it's a valuable way of thinking.
Right.
Not just that, but problem solving, interacting with others.
It is absolutely a way of problem solving. It's a way of, like I said, my wife does it naturally, just thinks kind of that way. And I realized it and turned it into philosophies because I'm more gifted in breaking stuff down because of being a rationalist, because she thinks in bigger concepts. So I can't just see it like that. I have to, like the steps or whatever, or a ladder. I got to build the things up and then I can climb up the ladder. But it's important, to have all the different kinds of thinking. Really, it does make a difference. And that's also what I, try to inspire in other people. And like I'm trying to inspire in you to do is to, get to where you start thinking like this. Because that's the issue. Like right here, right? So thinking that is not reason is commonly just random thoughts that are unregulated. Reason, these are all to me, by the way. So go ahead and read.
Okay. Reason, sound thinking. How concise/thoughtful are your explanations or rationales in your thinking? Logic, methodological reasoning. How do you organize your reasoning? Ontology, what is the thingness of things, or what is actually real? Epistemology, how do you know what you claim to know? Axiology, why and what is a value, worthy, good, or true? I think, therefore I am, and I am, therefore I think. Oh yeah, that's a classic one right there, that quote.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So like I said,
not just for you, right, putting it there, but that quote goes way back, like to.
Well, the first part does, where it says,
Yeah,
I think therefore I am, as Descartes, which is
Rene Descartes.
Yeah. So, which is him talking about how he knows he's alive or whatever. But I added the same thing, and I am, therefore I think.
No, it's a good addition. It's a really good addition, actually. Yeah.
So, anyways, we'll get together next week, and I appreciate you taking the time to do the video with me, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, right on. All right, well, go ahead and tell people about where they can find you and stuff. And always, just so you know, like I told you before, I'm going to, and told everybody, that I'm going to be putting the blog where I chat with you in every link we do. So they can always find all your info, and then I'll put every video you and me do together in that. So you'll end up with a lot of videos.
Okay, everyone, you can find me on X at Copper Violet. That's the main place I'm posting my thoughts and research right now. I am also occasionally posting on Reddit, u/Copper Violet. I have an academia.edu page. Look for the black icon with copper-colored triangles, lines, and some squiggly lines here and there. That one's me, because there are multiple Dylan Violets on academia.edu. Aside from that, I don't have a YouTube channel, but I do have a Facebook. It's a personal account. It's a picture of me looking down at my baby black lab. I share stuff there. It's mostly a personal account, but if you want to reach out and message me about something, like my thoughts on religion or the old copper complex, just let me know.
Right on. Well, everyone, take care, and see you next time.
See you, everybody.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument-driven apatheism, agnosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity, I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness.
And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.